"Excuse me, but are you sure you're in the right place?" The receptionist looked with disdain at the young mother holding her 8-month-old baby. All the other candidates wore elegant suits, while she only had simple clothes and a desperate need for that job. "I have no one to leave her with," she whispered, embarrassed. What she did not know was that the Millionaire CEO was watching everything from his office, and what he did next changed their lives forever. Tell us in the comments what country you're watching from. Like if you believe everyone deserves a second chance, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. The hum of the reception area's air conditioning seemed to judge every breath Chloe took. Her trembling fingers clung to the cheap pen as she tried to focus on the form, but the words blurred under the pressure of the stares she felt fixed on her back. Little Lily slept soundly in her arms, oblivious to the prejudiced drama unfolding around them. "Excuse me, but are you sure you're in the right place?" The receptionist's sharp voice broke the artificial silence of the lobby. Chloe looked up from the paper and met a gaze that blended malicious curiosity with barely disguised disdain. The woman, in her late 30s, with perfectly straightened hair and immaculate nails, scanned Chloe's simple clothes, the slightly wrinkled white blouse, the navy blue skirt she'd bought at a thrift store, and the black shoes that, though clean, showed the scars of months of intense use. "Yes, I have an interview for administrative assistant at 2 o'clock, Chloe replied, striving to keep her voice steady as she adjusted Lily in her arms. "Ah, I see. It's just—" The receptionist hesitated, directing a significant glance towards the other candidates, waiting on the Italian leather sofas. All were impeccably dressed in suits that probably cost more than Chloe's monthly rent. Their designer bags rested at their feet, like trophies from a life she could only imagine. People usually leave children at home for these types of appointments. Heat rose up Chloe's neck, a wave of shame and mixed anger. Lily stirred slightly in her arms, her tiny hand clutching the cheap necklace her mother wore, but she continued to sleep with the tranquility only the innocent possess. "I have no one to leave her with," Chloe murmured, hating how small and defensive her voice sounded. "But this is a serious company, isn't it? Sterling Innovations isn't just anywhere." One of the candidates, an elegant blonde in a gray suit that screamed money, let out a low laugh that sounded like breaking glass. She leaned towards her seatmate, an equally polished brunette, and whispered something in her ear. Both glanced at Chloe sidelong, their smiles sharp, like knives. "I know very well where I am," Chloe replied, her voice firmer than she felt. "And I know how to do the job." The receptionist shrugged with a gesture that screamed, "That's your problem," and returned to her monitor, her nails tapping on the keyboard with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Chloe took a deep breath, inhaling the expensive leather and industrial air freshener, and tried to concentrate again on the form. Full name: Chloe Jane Miller. Address: 23 Hope Lane, Uptown 3B, Willow Creek, California. Each line she filled out felt like a small confession of her precarious situation, a public exposure of everything she did not have. Previous professional experience: sales associate at a clothing store for 2 years, until pregnancy forced her to leave work. The 8-month gap without employment stretched on the paper like an open wound. The minutes passed with the slowness of cold honey. The other candidates conversed in low voices about their latest jobs at multinational corporations, their MBAs, their contacts in the sector. Chloe felt like a fish out of water, struggling to breathe in an environment that seemed designed to expel her. Lily began to stir slightly, her tiny lips moving in dreams. Chloe gently rocked her, humming a lullaby her own mother had sung to her years ago. The memory brought a pang of nostalgia and pain. If her mother were still alive, things would have been different. She would have had help, support, someone to care for Lily while she looked for work. Single mothers always bring problems, one of the candidates murmured to her companion, loud enough for Chloe to hear. Between absences for the child's illnesses and lack of concentration, Chloe clenched her fists, feeling her nails dig into her palms. She wanted to turn around and tell them exactly what she thought of their venomous comments. But she needed this job more than she needed her dignity right then. Her savings had run out weeks ago. The landlord had been patient, but not a saint, and her small apartment's fridge was practically empty. Chloe Miller? An elegant, middle-aged woman appeared at the office access door. She wore an impeccable black suit, and her hair was pulled back in a perfect bun. Her smile was professional, but not cold, and her eyes rested on Lily with something that seemed more like understanding than judgment. "Could you come, please?" the woman added softly. Chloe stood up, adjusted Lily in her arms, and followed the woman through the glass door. She expected to be led to a small human resources room, an impersonal cubicle, where some mid-level employee would ask routine questions before politely rejecting her. Instead, she was guided down a long hallway paneled with noble wood and contemporary paintings until she reached a spacious room with windows that offered a panoramic view of downtown Los Angeles. The city stretched before them like a tapestry of possibilities, its buildings glittering under the afternoon sun, and traffic flowing through the avenues like rivers of metal and glass. Chloe had never been on such a high floor of an office building, and for a moment she felt dizzy from the height and the magnificence of the panorama. Behind an imposing mahogany desk, a man around 40 was reading papers with concentration. When he looked up at her, Chloe felt a knot forming in her stomach. She immediately recognized that face from the business pages of newspapers. Ethan Hayes, the company's CEO himself. His eyes were an intense brown, surrounded by lines that spoke of years of responsibility and difficult decisions. His hair, slightly gray at the temples, was perfectly styled, and he wore a white shirt without a tie, which gave him a more relaxed look than Chloe had expected. He did not seem like the cold, calculating executive she had imagined. "Please have a seat," he said in a calm voice, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. Chloe obeyed, trying to calm Lily, who was beginning to stir after the change of environment. The baby opened her eyes, large and dark like her mother's, and looked with curiosity at the man in front of her. "Have you brought your daughter to the interview?" It wasn't a question. It was a neutral statement, without the judgment Chloe had heard at reception. "I had no choice," she replied, bracing herself for the inevitable reprimand. "I apologize if this is disruptive." Ethan observed her for a moment that felt eternal. His eyes moved between Chloe's face and little Lily, but there was no disdain in his gaze, only a genuine curiosity she had not expected to find. "How old is she?" he asked, leaning slightly forward. 8 months, Ethan nodded, and returned to the papers on his desk. Chloe could see her resume printed on company paper, her sparse lines of work experience exposed under the relentless fluorescent light. She felt small, insignificant, like an insect under a microscope. "I see here you have no experience in technology companies," he said without looking up. "I don't," Chloe admitted. "But I know how to use computers, Excel, Word. I'm a quick learner, and I'm not afraid to work hard." "Why do you want to work here, specifically?" Chloe hesitated. She had prepared an elegant answer about professional growth and development opportunities, the kind of speech she imagined recruiters wanted to hear. But something in Ethan's direct, unpretentious gaze made her change her mind. In her situation, honesty was the only thing she truly possessed. "Because I need it," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "I need a steady income and a serious job. I have a daughter to raise, and I cannot afford the luxury of being unemployed much longer. Her father is not part of our lives." The words fell into the office silence like stones in a pond, creating ripples of vulnerability Chloe immediately regretted showing. Lily began to cry softly, as if she had sensed the tension in the air. Chloe gently rocked her, murmuring words of endearment in English. "Shh, my love, it's okay. Mommy's here. Excuse me," she murmured to Ethan. "She must be hungry. You don't need to apologize." To her surprise, Ethan stood from his chair and walked to a small fridge in the corner of the room. He returned with a bottle of fresh water and a glass. "Would you like some water?" he offered, his voice softer than it had been until then. "Thank you." As Chloe drank, feeling the cool water soothe her throat, dry from nerves, Ethan watched Lily with an expression she couldn't decipher. It wasn't the annoyance she had expected, not even forced tolerance. He seemed intrigued. "What are your plans for childcare if you get the job?" he asked, returning to his seat. "I'm looking for a daycare nearby," Chloe lied. The truth was, she couldn't afford any decent daycare, but that wasn't something she could confess to a company CEO. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, and Chloe had the uncomfortable feeling he could see through her lie. But instead of pressing her, he simply nodded. "Tell me about your experience working under pressure." The rest of the interview proceeded surprisingly naturally. Ethan asked her hypothetical questions about how she would handle client conflicts, about her salary expectations. When Lily reached her little arms towards him with the natural curiosity of babies, Ethan did not hesitate to hold her as they finished talking. Seeing that successful, powerful man naturally holding her daughter, speaking to her in a soft voice while Lily played with the pen on his shirt, caused a strange feeling in Chloe's chest. It was an image she had not expected to see, and it stirred something deep within her. At the end of the interview, Ethan handed Lily back to her and stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city stretching beyond the glass. "Chloe," he said, without turning around, "I'd like to offer you the opportunity to do a practical test tomorrow. Nothing complicated, just to see how you handle our systems and protocols." Chloe felt her heart stop for a moment. "Really? Truly? And you can bring Lily too. We'll find a way to make this work." As she gathered her things and headed for the door, Ethan added one last thing that made her stop dead. "Tomorrow at 9. And Chloe, everyone deserves a second chance." Chloe's phone alarm sounded at 6 in the morning, but she had been awake since 5, staring at her small bedroom ceiling as she mentally reviewed everything that could go wrong on her first trial day. Lily slept deeply in the crib next to her bed, her tiny fists resting near her angelic face, oblivious to the storm of nerves raging through her mother. Chloe carefully got up, trying not to make noise, and headed to the tiny closet where her only presentable clothes hung. She had washed and ironed the white blouse the night before until it was impeccable, and she had managed to make the black shoes shine like mirrors with polish and much effort. It wasn't executive attire, but it was the best she could offer. The subway ride from Willow Creek to downtown Los Angeles took almost an hour. Chloe traveled with Lily in her arms, observing the other passengers heading to their jobs, with the confidence of those who have a defined place in the world. Men and women in expensive suits, reading financial newspapers or checking their phones. All seemed to be part of a universe she was just beginning to glimpse. "What are we doing here, little one?" she murmured to Lily, who responded with a toothless smile that melted her heart. "Your mommy is going to try to do something good for us." Upon arriving at the Sterling Innovations building, Chloe stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, observing the imposing glass and steel skyscraper that rose into the Los Angeles sky. The structure seemed a monument to ambition and success, something completely alien to her reality of unpaid bills and an empty fridge. The same receptionist from the day before greeted her with a professional smile that did not reach her eyes. This time, however, She had received precise instructions. "Good morning, Ms. Miller. Mr. Hayes is waiting for you. Ms. Davies, his assistant, will be down in a moment to escort you." Ms. Davies turned out to be the elegant woman who had led her to Ethan's office the day before. She was approximately 50 years old, with a presence that radiated competence and years of experience navigating corporate hallways. But when she saw Lily, her expression softened noticeably. "Good morning, Chloe, and good morning, little princess," she said, extending a finger for Lily to grasp. "I hope you slept well last night." "To be honest, very little," Chloe admitted, as she followed Ms. Davies toward the elevators. "Nerves, I suppose. It's normal. Your first day at any job is intimidating, but you'll be fine here. Ethan, Mr. Hayes is a good boss, demanding but fair." The elevator ascended silently to the 18th floor, where the administrative offices were located. Ms. Davies led her through a maze of cubicles and glass-walled offices until they reached a workspace that had been specially adapted for the occasion. "We've prepared this for you," Ms. Davies said, pointing to a desk equipped with a state-of-the-art computer, several file cabinets, and a partial view of the city. "And this," she added, gesturing towards a corner near the desk, "is for Lily." Chloe was speechless. They had installed a small children's area with a soft blanket, several educational toys, and even a foldable changing table discreetly placed behind a decorative screen. Everything had been arranged with a care and consideration that deeply moved her. "I don't know what to say," she murmured, feeling tears threaten to betray her. "Don't say anything. Just show us we trusted you for a good reason." Ms. Davies explained the day's tasks: organizing a client database, reviewing overdue correspondence, and preparing several pending reports. Nothing too complex, but varied enough to test different skills. "If you need anything, my office is just down the hall," Ms. Davies said before leaving. "And don't worry about Lily. Several of us have kids. We know babies can be unpredictable." Chloe sat at the computer, placed Lily in her little play area, and took a deep breath. The monitor turned on with a soft hum, displaying the corporate desktop with its blue background and the company logo. It was her first real contact with the business world, and she felt a mix of excitement and terror rushing through her veins. The first few hours went better than expected. The client database was disorganized, with duplicated information and incorrectly filled fields, but Chloe discovered she had a natural ability to detect patterns and inconsistencies. She worked with meticulous concentration, occasionally pausing to tend to Lily, who happily entertained herself with the colorful toys. It was around 11 in the morning when things got complicated. Lily began to get restless, and her soft whimpers escalated into a cry that echoed throughout the floor. Chloe tried to soothe her in a low voice, rocking her gently, but several employees started poking their heads over their cubicles, with expressions ranging from curiosity to annoyance. "Is everything okay over there?" asked a voice from a cubicle. It was Brenda, a woman in her late 30s with a severely geometric haircut and an expression that suggested she had very definite opinions about the presence of babies in the workplace. "Yes, excuse me. She just needs a diaper change," Chloe responded, standing to head to the changing table. "Perhaps it would be better if you did that in the restroom," Brenda suggested in a dry voice. "The smell can be unpleasant for the rest of us." Chloe felt her cheeks flush, but before she could respond, Mark from the IT department appeared. He was a young man, probably her age, with glasses and a kind smile that dramatically contrasted with Brenda's attitude. "Don't worry about it," Mark said, addressing Chloe directly. "We've all been there. My sister brought her baby several times when she didn't have a sitter." He approached Lily and started making funny faces, causing the little one to stop crying instantly and let out a giggle that sounded like tiny bells. "You're a little actress, aren't you?" Mark murmured in a loving voice. You just wanted some attention." Brenda mumbled something unintelligible and returned to her cubicle with determined steps that echoed like criticisms on the linoleum floor. Mark stayed for another moment, helping Chloe change Lily and chatting about his own experiences with small children. "Don't mind Brenda," he said in a low voice as Chloe cleaned Lily. "She's an excellent accountant, but she has the emotional flexibility of a steel ruler. Some of us know that real life sometimes intrudes on work, and that's okay." The afternoon brought new challenges and small triumphs. Chloe completed the reorganization of the client database with an efficiency that surprised even Ms. Davies, who reviewed her work with expert eyes and nodded with approval. "You've identified errors that had gone unnoticed for months," Ms. Davies commented, reviewing the spreadsheets on her monitor. "You have an eye for detail." Around 4 in the afternoon, just as Chloe was beginning to feel she could manage the situation, Ethan appeared at her workstation. He didn't announce his arrival with fanfare or a retinue of assistants. He simply emerged from the elevator and walked casually toward where she was working, pausing to greet several employees along the way. "How's the first day going?" he asked, casually leaning against Chloe's desk. "Good, I think," she replied, saving the document she had been working on. "Ms. Davies has given me varied tasks, and I'm learning a lot." Ethan looked towards the children's area where Lily was playing with a colorful rattle, completely absorbed in the toy. "It looks like she's adjusting well too, better than I expected, though I think some colleagues preferred she wasn't here. Any specific problems?" Chloe hesitated. She didn't want to start her first day by complaining about other employees, but Brenda's attitude had been difficult to ignore. "Nothing I can't handle," she finally said. Ethan studied her for a moment, and Chloe had the feeling he could read between the lines better than she had expected. But instead of pressing her for details, he simply nodded. "If anything comes up that you can't handle, let me know." He walked over to where Lily was and knelt down to her level. The little one looked at him with those big, curious eyes that seemed to absorb the entire world around her. "Hello, little one," Ethan murmured in a noticeably softer voice than he used for business. "How's your first day in the office?" Lily smiled at him and extended the rattle, as if offering to share her most precious treasure. Ethan carefully took it and shook it gently, making the child let out a giggle that made several nearby employees involuntarily smile. "I think she likes you," Chloe observed, feeling strangely moved by the scene. "The feeling is mutual." At the end of the day, as Chloe gathered her things and prepared Lily for the journey home, Ms. Davies approached with an expression Chloe couldn't decipher. "Ethan wants to see you in his office before you leave," she said. "Don't worry, it's nothing bad." Chloe's heart raced as she went up to the executive floor with Lily in her arms. Had she made a mistake? Had Brenda filed a formal complaint? Was this the conversation where they would politely tell her the experiment had failed? Ethan was waiting for her, standing by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city that was beginning to light up with the evening glow. "Have a seat," he said, without turning around. "Ms. Davies has given me her report for the day." Chloe sat on the edge of the chair, bracing for the worst. Lily, tired after her day of adventures, snuggled against her chest and closed her eyes. "You completed in one day work that usually takes 3, Ethan continued, finally turning to face her. "You identified problems in our systems that our experienced staff had overlooked, and you did it while caring for an 8-month-old baby." Chloe blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. That's... Well, it's extraordinary." Ethan walked over to his desk and picked up an envelope that had been waiting there. "This is a formal job offer," he said, extending it to her. "Full-time with competitive salary and full benefits. The company will officially implement more inclusive policies for working mothers, starting with you." Chloe took the envelope with trembling hands, not daring to open it, fearing she would wake from what seemed like a dream, too good to be true. "I don't know what to say. Say yes." "Yes," she whispered, feeling tears finally stream down her cheeks. "Yes, of course. Yes." As she rode down the elevator with Lily asleep in her arms and the employment contract in her bag, Chloe allowed herself, for the first time in months, to feel something akin to hope. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that good things in her life tended not to last long. She didn't know how prophetic that voice would turn out to be. 3 weeks after her first day, Chloe had developed a routine that gave her a sense of control over her new life. She woke up at 6 a.m., prepared Lily with the efficiency of someone who had perfected every movement, and took the 7:30 a.m. subway that brought her to downtown Los Angeles just in time to start her workday at 9 a.m. The children's area they had prepared for Lily had become a small attraction within the office. Ms. Davies had added more educational toys, and several employees had started stopping by regularly to greet the little one, who responded with smiles and babbling that seemed to brighten even the most stressful days. "Good morning, Princess." This was Mark's morning greeting every time he passed Chloe's desk. Lily had started recognizing him and waved her arms excitedly whenever she saw him approach. "How's the youngest employee of the company?" "I think she's getting too used to all this attention," Chloe commented as she organized the day's documents. "She's going to end up being spoiled." "Impossible," Mark retorted with a smile. "Look at those eyes. She's too smart for that." However, not everything was harmony in the workplace. Brenda had begun a silent but persistent campaign of sarcastic comments and disapproving glances that made Chloe feel constantly observed and judged. "I hope when I have an important meeting, we don't have interruptions," Brenda murmured one morning when Lily had let out a small squeal of delight at seeing a bird outside the window. "International clients aren't used to these distractions." Patricia Jenkins, the supervisor of the finance department, had become an unexpected ally. She was a woman in her mid-40s, with 2 teenage children and a practical understanding of the challenges of balancing motherhood and a professional career. "Brenda has never had children," Patricia commented to Chloe during a coffee break in the break room. "And frankly, I think it bothers her that you can do your job so well while taking care of a baby. It feels like a criticism of her own life of exclusive dedication to work." "I don't want to cause trouble," Chloe murmured, watching through the glass as Lily played in her area, while Ms. Davies supervised her during her break. "You're not causing trouble. You're showing that it's possible to do things differently, and that always makes some people uncomfortable." The first real crisis arrived on a Thursday morning when Chloe came to work to find that someone had completely rearranged Lily's children's area overnight. The toys had been put away in a box, the blanket had been folded and placed in a closet, and the foldable changing table had disappeared completely. "Where is everything?" Chloe asked Ms. Davies, who seemed just as bewildered. "I have no idea. Last night when I left, everything was in its place." Lily, disoriented by the absence of her familiar space, began to cry with an intensity that resonated throughout the floor. Chloe rocked her desperately, but the little one was clearly upset by the change in her routine. "Oh, please," Brenda muttered from her cubicle. "Can't she be taken somewhere where she won't bother the rest of us?" "Someone has moved all her things," Chloe responded, her voice rising for the first time since she had started working there. "If you helped me find them instead of complaining, maybe it's a sign that this experiment isn't working," Brenda suggested, standing from her desk. "This is an office, not a daycare." The tension in the air was palpable. Several employees had stopped working to observe the confrontation, some clearly uncomfortable, others seemingly enjoying the drama. Lily continued to cry, and Chloe felt increasingly desperate and humiliated. It was then that Ethan appeared. He said nothing initially. He simply stood at the entrance of the work area, observing the scene with an expression Chloe couldn't interpret. His presence was enough for the murmur of voices to gradually fade until only Lily's crying could be heard. "Can someone explain to me what's going on here?" he finally asked, his voice calm, but with an undertone that made several employees visibly flinch. "Someone dismantled the child's area overnight," Ms. Davies quickly explained. "All her things have disappeared." Ethan nodded slowly, his eyes sweeping over the group of employees who had gathered, as if he were memorizing each face. "I see. And is there no one who knows how this happened?" The silence stretched like an uncomfortable stain. Brenda shifted in her place, avoiding Ethan's direct gaze. "Because," Ethan continued, his voice taking on a firmer tone, "whoever did this has violated a corporate policy implemented by executive management, and that is something I take very seriously." He addressed Chloe directly, who was still rocking Lily in a desperate attempt to calm her. "Allow me," he said, extending his arms toward the baby. Chloe hesitated for a moment before handing over her daughter. Ethan took Lily with a naturalness that surprised her, holding her against his chest and beginning to speak to her in a low voice. "Shh, little one. I know you miss your toys. We're going to find them, okay?" Incredibly, Lily began to calm down. Her sobs reduced to soft hiccups as she clung to Ethan's shirt, seemingly comforted by his firm, calming presence. "Ms. Davies," Ethan said, without looking away from Lily, "I want you to review the security footage from last night, and I want a full report on who had access to this area after hours." "Of course," Ms. Davies responded, already making mental notes. "Meanwhile," Ethan continued, "I want everything that has disappeared to be immediately replaced, and additional measures will be added to ensure this does not happen again." Lily had stopped crying completely and was now playing with the pen in Ethan's shirt pocket. Fascinated by the shiny object, the image of the company CEO tenderly holding a baby while giving executive orders was so incongruous that several employees seemed to be processing the scene as if it were a hallucination. "Brenda," Ethan finally said, turning to her. "Yes, sir. I want to see you in my office in an hour." Brenda visibly paled, but nodded without protest. The crowd of employees gradually began to disperse, returning to their desks with discreet murmurs and occasional glances toward Chloe. Ethan stayed for another moment, gently rocking Lily as he spoke softly with Chloe. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay," she responded, though her voice still trembled slightly. "I was just startled to find everything messed up. Lily gets upset when her routine changes. It's understandable. Children need stability." Ethan handed Lily back to her, who had returned to her normal state of cheerful curiosity. Her small hands reached out to Chloe, babbling nonsense words that sounded like music after her previous sobs. "This won't happen again," Ethan said, with a certainty that made Chloe feel protected, for the first time since the day had begun. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done, sir." "You don't have to worry about it. This company is committed to creating an inclusive work environment, and that includes supporting working mothers like you." 3 hours later, Brenda had been transferred to another department on a different floor. Ms. Davies never explained exactly what the security footage investigation had revealed, but when Chloe arrived at work the next day, she found that Lily's children's area had not only been restored, but enhanced with new toys, a comfortable rocking chair for feeding, and a small sign that read, "Lily Miller VIP area." "VIP?" Chloe asked Ms. Davies, pointing to the sign with a smile. "Very important, princess," Ms. Davies explained with a wink. It was Ethan's idea. That afternoon, as Chloe organized her documents at the end of the day, she received an unexpected visit. Mark approached her desk with a more serious expression than usual. "Hey," he said, leaning against her desk. I wanted to apologize for what happened this morning. Some of us knew Brenda was upset about the situation, but we didn't think she'd go that far. You don't have to apologize for something you didn't do, Chloe replied, putting the last documents into her filing cabinet. Yes, I do. When we see something unfair happening and we don't do anything to stop it, we become part of the problem. Chloe looked at him with new appreciation. Mark was barely 28, but he spoke with a moral maturity that impressed her. How did you know it was Brenda who— I didn't know for sure, Mark admitted. But some comments she'd made, the way she looked over here when she thought no one was watching, I should have said something sooner. Lily, who had been playing with a rattle in her area, let out a small squeal of delight at seeing a seagull pass by the window. Both Chloe and Mark automatically smiled at her enthusiasm. She makes everything seem simpler, doesn't she? Mark commented. Too simple sometimes, Chloe responded. She doesn't understand why some adults can be so complicated. Maybe we're the ones who need to learn from her. As Chloe prepared Lily for the journey home, she reflected on the day's events. She had experienced humiliation, support, confrontation, and protection, all within a few hours. But what had impacted her most was the way Ethan had handled the situation, with firmness, but without cruelty, with authority, but also with humanity. When the elevator doors closed and began their descent to the lobby, Chloe realized she had crossed some kind of threshold. She was no longer simply the desperate single mother who had arrived there seeking any opportunity. She was becoming part of something bigger, though she didn't yet fully understand what that something was. On the 20th floor, Ethan remained in his office long after the rest of the building had emptied, looking out the window at the city lights flickering like terrestrial stars. On his desk rested Ms. Davies' report about the day's incident, but his thoughts were elsewhere. There was something about the way Chloe had handled the crisis that morning that had deeply impressed him. She hadn't screamed or responded aggressively when attacked. Instead, she had shown a dignity under pressure that many veteran executives did not possess. And the way Lily had calmed in his arms was the first time in years he had felt that particular mix of protection and tenderness that comes from caring for someone vulnerable. Perhaps it was time to admit that his interest in this situation went beyond a simple inclusive corporate policy. A month after the incident with Brenda, Chloe had found her rhythm in the office. Lily, now almost 10 months old, had developed a vibrant personality that charmed most employees. She had started crawling, which had required some modifications to her play area, and had developed a particular fascination with anything that sparkled or made noise. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Ms. Davies approached Chloe's desk with an expression that blended urgency and concern. "Chloe, I need you to prepare the main conference room for a very important presentation. We have investors from New York and businessmen from Silicon Valley coming to hear the proposal for the new West Coast expansion project." "Of course," Chloe responded, immediately saving the document she had been working on. "What do you need me to prepare? The documents are in my office, organized by color-coded folders. I need you to place them on each seat according to the diagram on my desk, and make sure the audio-visual system is working correctly." Chloe looked at Lily, who was busy building a wobbly tower with colorful blocks. "You can, of course, bring her with you. The room is acoustically insulated, and besides, it will be quick." The main conference room was impressive. A mahogany table that could seat 20 people, windows offering a spectacular view of the city, and technological equipment that probably cost more than Chloe's annual salary. She placed Lily and her portable playpen in a discreet corner and began organizing the materials for the presentation. The documents were meticulously prepared: market analysis, financial projections, demographic studies of the Spanish Mediterranean regions. As she distributed them, Chloe couldn't help but read some fragments. impressed by the complexity and ambition of the project Ethan was presenting. Impressive, right? Chloe startled and turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, dressed in a navy blue suit that made him look even more authoritative than usual. He carried a tablet in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. "Excuse me, I didn't know you had arrived. Ms. Davies asked me to prepare." "I know, and you're doing an excellent job, as always." Ethan approached to review the arrangement of the documents, nodding with approval at the systematic organization Chloe had implemented. "Have you had a chance to read any of the material?" he asked. "Only a few fragments as I organized them. I hope you don't mind. It's just, what do you think of it?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her opinion on corporate strategy, and for a moment she didn't know how to respond. "It's ambitious," she finally said. "The analysis of the New York market is very detailed, and the numbers for Silicon Valley seem promising. Although," she paused, hesitating whether she should continue. "Although what?" "Although I wonder if you've considered local competition. There are established tech companies in New York that might resist the entry of a Los Angeles firm." Ethan looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher, and for a moment Chloe feared she had overstepped her bounds. "That's a very astute observation," he finally said. "Do you have any suggestions?" "Well, I'm not an expert, but perhaps. Have you considered partnerships with local companies instead of direct competition?" "Strategic alliances," Ethan murmured, making a note on his tablet. "Interesting." Lily, who had been playing quietly, let out a joyful cry and began to clap, seemingly delighted with something she had managed to do with her blocks. The sound resonated in the silent room, and Chloe rushed towards her. "Little one, Daddy's working," she automatically murmured, before realizing what she had said. She froze, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "Excuse me, I didn't mean. It's just she." Ethan had followed her steps and was now kneeling beside Lily, who had built what looked like a surprisingly tall tower for a baby her age. "Very impressive, architect," he murmured to the child with a smile. Then, turning to Chloe, "You don't have to apologize. It's natural for her to seek a paternal figure. It's not a responsibility. It's a privilege." Before Chloe could fully process those words, Ms. Davies appeared at the entrance of the room. "Ethan, the investors have arrived. They're in the lobby." "Perfect. Chloe, can you stay during the presentation? I might need you to take notes or handle the tech if there are any issues." "Of course. And Lily?" "Lily stays too. If she misbehaves, just discreetly step out." The next few minutes were a whirlwind of expensive suits and formal handshakes. The New York investors were exactly what Chloe had imagined. Middle-aged men with watches that probably cost more than her apartment, speaking in a mix of East Coast accents that denoted cosmopolitan education. The Silicon Valley entrepreneurs were slightly younger, but equally intimidating. With that confidence only sustained success brings. Chloe retreated to a corner with Lily, who seemed fascinated by the sudden activity in the room. Ethan's presentation began with a mastery that captivated even Chloe, who had only seen fragments of the material. He spoke with controlled passion about the expansion opportunities, the economic benefits for all regions involved, and the long-term vision of creating a technological network connecting Los Angeles with major West Coast cities. Everything was going perfectly until Lily decided she had been quiet long enough. Without Chloe realizing it, the little one had managed to escape her playpen and had started crawling toward the center of the room, drawn by the projector lights and the adults' voices. By the time Chloe noticed, Lily had already reached Ethan's feet, who was in the middle of explaining a particularly complex graph on growth projections. "As you can see in this slide, our calculations indicate that." Ethan paused, feeling something tugging at his pant leg, looked down, and found Lily standing. She had recently started pulling herself up, clinging to his leg, and looking up at him with a radiant smile, as if she had achieved the most impressive feat in the world. Absolute silence spread through the room. The investors and businessmen looked at the scene with expressions ranging from surprise to amusement. Chloe felt her heart stop, sure that she had just ruined the most important presentation of the company. "Excuse me," she murmured, getting up to pick up Lily. "I'll take her out." "No," Ethan said calmly, bending down to lift Lily into his arms. "I think our youngest consultant wants to participate in the presentation." Lily, delighted to be the center of attention, began to babble happily and point towards the projection screen with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "As I was saying," Ethan continued, without missing a beat, "our growth calculations are based on a deep understanding of family needs in the American market, because ultimately, our business efforts boil down to building a better future for the next generation." It was a moment of brilliant improvisation. Ethan had transformed what could have been an embarrassing interruption into a powerful statement about the company's values. Lily, for her part, seemed completely comfortable in her role as co-presenter, occasionally adding her own comments in the form of joyful babbling that made the investors smile. "And what does our little consultant think about the projections for New York?" asked one of the New Yorkers, with a genuine smile. Lily looked at him seriously for a moment, then let out what sounded like a very decided opinion in her own baby language. The room erupted in warm laughter. "I think she agrees with the strategy," Ethan translated solemnly. The rest of the presentation continued, with Lily comfortably settled in Ethan's arm. He had subtly modified his style to occasionally include his little companion. When he showed images of the West Coast cities, he murmured to Lily, "Those are the beaches where you can play someday." When he explained the economic benefits, he added, "We are building opportunities for when you are old enough to work." The investors were clearly delighted. The human moment had transformed a standard corporate presentation into something memorable and emotional. One of the Silicon Valley businessmen commented that he had never seen a company integrate its family values so naturally with its business objectives. At the end of the presentation, when the final handshakes were exchanged and the next meeting scheduled, several investors specifically approached to say goodbye to Lily, who had completely captivated the room. "That little one has a future in business," one of the New Yorkers commented to Chloe. "She improved an already excellent presentation." After the visitors left, the conference room fell silent, except for Lily's contented babbling. Ethan was still holding her, seemingly in no hurry to return her to Chloe. "I'm so sorry," Chloe began. "I don't know how she escaped." "Don't apologize. It was the best presentation I've given in years. Seriously. And I think we just secured the best investment terms in the company's history." Ms. Davies appeared at the entrance with an expression of complete astonishment. "Ethan, the New Yorkers just confirmed their investment, and the Silicon Valley Group wants to double their original participation. What on earth happened in here?" "We had expert help from our youngest advisor," Ethan replied, gently tickling Lily, who responded with delightful giggles. That night, as Chloe prepared Lily for bed in their small apartment, she couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. The way Ethan had handled the situation had not only been professionally brilliant, but profoundly revealing of his character. She had seen executives furious over much smaller interruptions. She had known men who considered children obstacles to be tolerated rather than people to be cherished. But Ethan had done something different. He had found a way to turn a potentially disastrous moment into something beautiful and authentic. As she put Lily in her crib, the little one looked at her with those big, intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than a baby should be able to perceive. "What do you think of all this, little one?" Chloe murmured, gently caressing her daughter's dark hair. "Do you think we're where we're supposed to be? Lily responded with a yawn, seemingly satisfied with her day of corporate adventures. But before closing her eyes, she extended her small hand towards Chloe and babbled something that sounded surprisingly like "Dada." Chloe froze, her heart beating faster. It was the first time Lily had tried a real word, and the word she had chosen filled her with a mixture of emotion and terror. Because as she watched her daughter fall asleep, with a smile on her tiny lips, Chloe realized she wasn't the only one who was starting to see Ethan as more than just an understanding boss, and that terrified her as much as it excited her. The video first appeared on Instagram at 8 in the morning the next day. Someone in the conference room had discreetly recorded the moment Lily joined Ethan's presentation and had uploaded it with the caption, "When you bring your daughter to work and she closes the best deal of the year, boss life, future so, LaTeX." By 10 in the morning, the video had been shared over 1,000 times. By noon, it had crossed from Instagram to Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, accumulating tens of thousands of views and comments that ranged from adorable to inspirational. Sterling Innovations proves that humanity and professionalism are not incompatible. This is why we need more companies that support working parents. That kid has better stage presence than most executives I know. Plot twist: the baby is actually the real CEO of the company. Chloe learned of the viral phenomenon when Ms. Davies approached her desk with an expression that mixed amusement and slight concern. "Have you seen social media this morning?" she asked, showing her mobile phone. Chloe watched the video with a mixture of fascination and horror. Seeing her daughter on screen, so tiny and confident in Ethan's arms, caused a wave of contradictory emotions. Pride at how adorable Lily looked, gratitude towards Ethan for having handled the situation with such grace, and absolute terror at the public exposure. "Oh my God," she murmured. "How many people have seen this?" "A lot, and the comments are mostly positive, which is a surprise, considering how cruel social media can be." Lily, oblivious to her new internet celebrity status, played happily with her colorful blocks, occasionally looking up to smile at any employee who passed near her area. At 11, Ms. Davies returned with more complex news. "Ethan wants to see you in his office," she said, quickly adding, seeing Chloe's panicked expression, "You're not in trouble. In fact, I think it's the opposite." "Should I bring Lily?" "Bring her. I think she's part of the conversation." The elevator ride to the executive floor had never seemed so long. Chloe had developed a comfortable relationship with Ethan over the past few months, but the viral situation added a whole new dimension to their interaction. Was he annoyed by the exposure? Worried about the company's image? Or was it something completely different? Ethan was waiting for her, not behind his desk, but in the more informal seating area of his office, with 2 cups of coffee already prepared and a glass of water for Chloe. "Please sit down," he said, gesturing to the sofa opposite him. "We need to talk about what happened yesterday, and more specifically, about what's happening today." Chloe sat on the edge of the sofa, placing Lily on her lap. The little one was immediately drawn to the light streaming through the windows and began to babble happily as she tried to catch the sunbeams with her tiny hands. "I assume you've seen the video," Ethan continued. "Yes, I'm so sorry. I didn't know someone was recording, and if I had known, what would you have done differently?" The question caught her off guard. I would have kept Lily further away from the presentation. I wouldn't have allowed her to interrupt. And you would have missed the best sales moment of my career?" Chloe looked at him, not understanding. "The New York investors increased their proposal by 20% this morning," Ethan explained. "The Silicon Valley Group wants to be exclusive partners in their region, and we've received calls from businessmen in 3 other U.S. cities asking about investment opportunities." "Really?" "Really. And it's not just about the numbers or the projections. It's because they saw a company that genuinely integrates human values with professional excellence. Lily didn't interrupt the presentation. She completed it. Ethan stood up and walked to the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city stretching beyond the glass. "But there are consequences we need to discuss," he continued. "The video has gone viral. That means media attention. And media attention means public scrutiny." Chloe's stomach tightened. "What kind of scrutiny?" "Journalists asking about our policy for employees with children, competitors trying to find negative angles, and possibly unwanted attention towards you and Lily." As if she had been waiting for her moment, Lily let out a small cry of joy and clapped, apparently delighted with something only she could see. The sound broke the tension in the room, and both adults smiled involuntarily. "What do you recommend?" Chloe asked. "We have several options. We can ignore all the attention and hope it fades. We can issue a formal corporate statement about our inclusive policies. Or," he paused, as if carefully considering his next words. "Or what? Or we can embrace the opportunity, use this attention to position Sterling Innovations as a leader in progressive workplace policies. We could be starting an important conversation about work-life balance in America." Chloe processed the options, while Lily played with the buttons on her blouse. The idea of more public attention terrified her, but she also recognized that Ethan was right about the opportunity. What exactly would embracing the opportunity mean? Controlled interviews with selected media, an article in a business magazine about inclusive policies, perhaps a conference on the future of work in the U.S. And I'd have to participate in all that, only if you feel comfortable. But Chloe, your story is powerful. Single mother who finds opportunity, company that adapts its policies to support real employees with real needs. It's exactly the kind of narrative that can create real change. Lily, as if she had been following the conversation, reached out to Ethan with outstretched arms. Without hesitation, he took her in his arms. And she immediately snuggled against his chest with the familiarity of someone who feels completely safe. The image struck them both simultaneously. A man in an executive suit, tenderly holding a baby who was not biologically his, but who had clearly adopted him as a paternal figure. It was a scene that spoke of possibilities neither of them had fully articulated. "I'll think about it," Chloe finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "Take all the time you need, but there's something else I need to tell you." Ethan sat down again, still holding Lily in his arms, who had started playing with his tie. "The video has generated not only positive attention, we've also received some less favorable comments. People who think an office is no place for children, that this is a publicity stunt, that we are compromising professionalism. I see. And there's a possibility someone might try to use this against you. Investigate your past, your personal situation. I don't want to scare you, but you need to be prepared." Chloe felt a shiver of fear run down her spine. Her past held no terrible secrets, but it also wasn't the perfect story the media often preferred. A single mother without a college degree, working subsistence jobs before finding this opportunity. Some might paint her as undeserving of the position she had achieved. "What do you recommend?" "That we be proactive, that we control the narrative instead of reacting to it, and that you have all the legal and public relations support of the company." "Why would you do all this for me?" It was the question that had been growing in her mind for weeks, and she had finally found the courage to ask it. Ethan looked directly into her eyes for the first time since the conversation had begun. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because..." He paused, seeming to reconsider his words. Lily chose that moment to babble something that sounded surprisingly like Dada, her tiny hands clinging to Ethan's shirt as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Because this little lady has become an important part of my daily life, Ethan finished, his voice notably softer. And her well-being is my priority. The rest of the conversation proceeded on safer ground. Contingency plans, communication strategies, additional security measures to protect Chloe and Lily's privacy. But the unsaid words floated in the air between them, like a promise and a warning at the same time. When Chloe finally returned to her desk, she found 3 bouquets of flowers waiting for her. One from the New York investors, another from a group of working mothers who had seen the video and wanted to express their support, and a third with no card that simply read, "To the best co-presenter in LA." Ms. Davies approached with a smile that seemed to know more than she was willing to share. "Everything okay in the meeting?" "Yes, I think so, though things are going to get a little complicated." "The best things in life always get complicated," Ms. Davies wisely observed. "That's how you distinguish them from the mediocre ones." That afternoon, as Chloe organized the day's documents and prepared Lily for the journey home, she couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with Ethan. There was something in the way he had looked at Lily, in how he had said her well-being was his priority, that suggested the feelings she had been trying to ignore were not unilateral. But there was also a voice in her head that reminded her that good things in her life tended to complicate quickly, and she had a feeling that the simplicity of the last few months was about to transform into something much more complex and emotionally dangerous. As she waited for the subway at the station, with Lily asleep in her arms and the bustle of Los Angeles flowing around her, Chloe allowed herself for a moment to imagine what it would be like if things worked out. A life where she didn't have to constantly worry about money, where Lily had stability and opportunities, where she herself could develop professionally without sacrificing her motherhood. It was a tempting image, so tempting that it almost terrified her with its perfection. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. 2 weeks after the viral phenomenon, Chloe's life had found a new balance. The media had shown interest for a few days, but the attention had gradually faded to other news. The company had officially implemented its policy of supporting working parents, becoming a pioneer in the American tech sector. And Chloe had begun receiving invitations to speak at conferences on work-life balance. It was a Friday afternoon, and she was finishing reviewing the weekly reports when Ms. Davies approached her desk with an expression she hadn't seen before, a mix of concern and something that looked like suspicion. "Chloe, there's someone at reception asking for you," she said in a low voice. "He says he's family, but..." "Family?" Chloe frowned. She had no family in Los Angeles, and the few extended family members she had knew where she worked, but had never visited her. "He says he's Lily's father." Chloe's world abruptly stopped. Her hands froze on the keyboard, and she felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Lily, who had been playing quietly with her colorful blocks, looked up, as if she had sensed the sudden shift in the atmosphere. Are you sure? He says he needs to speak with you urgently about his daughter." Chloe closed her eyes, feeling a wave of nausea sweep through her stomach. Jackson, after 10 months of absolute silence, after disappearing when he found out she was pregnant, after not responding to her desperate calls when Lily was born, after not contributing a single dollar for medical or living expenses, he had decided to show up. "Did you tell him I was here?" "I told him I'd check if you were available. Do you want me to tell him you're not?" Chloe looked at Lily, who had returned to focusing on her toys, completely oblivious to the fact that her world was about to become unimaginably complicated. Her little daughter had found stability, security, even a paternal figure in Ethan. What right did Jackson have to appear now, No, she finally said, her voice firmer than she felt. Tell him to come down. But I want the conversation to be in the small meeting room, not here. Are you sure? Can I tell him to come back another time or make an appointment? No, Ms. Davies. It's better to face this now. Ms. Davies nodded, but before leaving she added, Do you want me to let Ethan know? No, Chloe responded quickly, then reconsidered. Not yet. First, I need to know what he wants. The 10 minutes it took Jackson to come down from reception were the longest of Chloe's life. She picked Lily up in her arms, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair as she tried to calm herself. Her daughter looked at her with those big, inquisitive eyes, as if she could feel the tension, but not understand its source. Everything's going to be okay, little one, she murmured, though she wasn't sure she believed her own words. Jackson hadn't changed much in 10 months. He still had that easy smile that had first attracted her to him, the slightly tousled hair that always seemed effortlessly perfect, and that casual but calculated way of dressing that gave him an air of success without fully committing to adult responsibility. Chloe, he said upon seeing her, opening his arms as if expecting a hug. You look incredible. Motherhood suits you well. She didn't move from her position by the meeting room table, keeping Lily firmly in her arms. What do you want, Jackson? Is that how you're going to greet your daughter's father? His smile faded slightly at the coolness of her reception. I've come to meet my little girl. Your little girl? Chloe repeated, her voice full of disbelief. Your little girl? Where have you been for the past 10 months? Where were you when she was born? Where were you when I had to take her to the hospital alone with a fever at 3 in the morning? Chloe, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I needed time to process all this. I wasn't ready to be a father, and now you are. Jackson took a step closer, and Lily recoiled against her mother, apparently intimidated by this stranger who spoke in a loud voice. I've seen the videos online, he said, and something in his tone made Chloe tense. My daughter on social media, in newspapers, people talking about you as if you're some kind of hero. And I realized I've been missing something important, that I have rights as a father. Rights? Chloe repeated, feeling rage begin to replace fear. What rights? The right to disappear when things get tough. The right to reappear when it suits you. The right to know my daughter. The right for my name to be on her birth certificate. The right to participate in the important decisions of her life. Lily began to cry softly, sensitive to the growing tension in the room. Chloe automatically rocked her, murmuring words of comfort in a low voice. She doesn't know you, she said firmly. You're nothing but a stranger to her. That can change, and it should change. Jackson sat in one of the chairs without invitation, adopting a posture that suggested he planned to stay a while. Look, Chloe, I know I made mistakes. I didn't handle the situation well when you told me you were pregnant, but I've grown since then. I've been working, saving money. I'm ready to take on my responsibilities. Working at what? I have an import-export business. Electronics, mostly. It's doing really well. Chloe knew enough about Jackson's businesses to be skeptical. He always had grandiose business plans that never fully materialized, living in a gray area between legitimate ambition and get-rich-quick schemes. And what exactly do you want? I want to be part of her daily life. Visiting time, weekends, eventually, maybe shared custody. The words fell like bombs into the silence of the room. Shared custody. Chloe felt the world wobble beneath her feet. Absolutely not. It's not your decision, Chloe. I have legal rights. Legal rights? Your name isn't even on her birth certificate. That can be fixed. A paternity test, a legal process. It's not complicated. Lily had stopped crying, but still clung to her mother. Her tiny fingers tangled in Chloe's blouse, as if she could feel something threatening her secure world. Why now, Jackson? Why exactly now? I already told you. I've seen what's happening with you two. The company, the media attention. Clearly things are going well for you, and Lily deserves to have her father in her life. There was something in the way he said, "Things are going well for you," that made Chloe suspect his motivations weren't entirely paternal. He had seen the stories about the company's success, about her new position and job stability. It was possible he was seeking some kind of financial benefit. "I need time to think about this," she finally said. "Of course, but not too long. I've already consulted with a lawyer, and he's explained my options." The implicit threat in his words was crystal clear. Chloe felt a shiver of fear run down her back. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you of the legal reality. I am that child's biological father, and I have rights. I'd prefer we reach an amicable agreement, but if not..." He left the threat hanging in the air. "I think this conversation is over," Chloe said, standing up with Lily in her arms. "Think about it, Chloe. 1 week. After that, my lawyer will contact you." After Jackson left, Chloe remained seated in the meeting room for a long time, rocking Lily as she tried to process what had just happened. Her carefully built world, the stability she had begun to take for granted, the sense of security she had started to develop. Everything suddenly felt fragile. Ms. Davies appeared at the door with a worried expression. "How was it?" "Complicated," Chloe murmured. "Very complicated. Do you need to talk to someone? Call a lawyer?" "I need to talk to Ethan. He's in a conference until 6, but I can interrupt him if it's urgent." "No, don't interrupt him. But can you tell him I need to speak with him when he's done? It's important." That afternoon, as she waited at her desk for Ethan to finish his meeting, Chloe couldn't concentrate on any task. Lily seemed to have absorbed her anxiety and was more restless than usual, requiring constant attention. Every sound in the hallway made her jump, fearing Jackson had decided to return. When Ethan finally appeared at her workstation at 6:30, he immediately realized something was terribly wrong. "What happened?" he asked without preamble. "Lily's father showed up," Chloe said, without looking up from her desk. "He wants visitation rights, possibly shared custody." Ethan stood still for a moment, processing the information. "When?" "This afternoon. He came here, to the office." "Here?" Ethan's voice took on a harder tone. "How did he know where you work?" "The viral videos, I guess. It's not hard to investigate." Ethan looked at Lily, who had begun to cry softly, as if she could feel the tension of the adults around her. "Come to my office," he said firmly. "We need to talk about this properly." As they went up the elevator to the executive floor, Chloe realized that Jackson's arrival had fundamentally changed something in her relationship with Ethan. She was no longer simply an employee with an understanding boss. Somehow, they had become an impromptu family under threat, and that altered every dimension of their interaction. And as she looked at the reflection of the three of them in the elevator doors, Ethan with his protective, determined expression, she with her mix of fear and resolve, and Lily nestled between them as if she instinctively knew where she was safe, Chloe realized that the battle ahead wouldn't just be about legal custody. It would be about the right to define what constituted a real family. Ethan's office had been transformed into an improvised war room. On the meeting table lay legal documents printed from websites about parental rights in the U.S. and handwritten notes in Ms. Davies's meticulous handwriting. A week had passed since Jackson's appearance, and each day had brought new complications. Jackson's lawyer filed a formal petition yesterday, explained attorney David Chen, Sterling Innovations' corporate lawyer, as he reviewed the documents with a grim expression. He's requesting a paternity test and immediate visitation rights, with the eventual intention of seeking shared custody. Chloe sank deeper into her chair, with Lily asleep in her arms. The little one had been more irritable during the last week, as if she could perceive the constant tension surrounding her mother. "What are his chances?" Ethan asked from his position by the window. "Legally, as the biological father, he has significant rights once paternity is established," David admitted. "The fact that he's been absent during the child's first year of life will work against him, but it's not enough to completely deny him access. And shared custody? That would be more difficult to get, but not impossible. U.S. courts favor both parents' involvement when possible." Chloe felt nauseous. The idea of sending Lily with Jackson every weekend, of losing half her time with her daughter, of not being able to protect her from a man who had proven unreliable, filled her with terror. "There's something else," David continued in a graver voice. "We've received information that Jackson is working with a private investigator to gather information about Chloe's situation." "What kind of information?" Ethan asked, his voice taking on a dangerous tone. "Her employment history? Her financial situation before working here? Her personal life? He's probably looking for something he can use to argue that she's not a stable or fit mother." Chloe felt as if the floor had opened beneath her. "But I haven't done anything wrong. I've cared for Lily alone for almost a year. I've worked hard to give her stability." "It's not about what you've done wrong," David gently explained. "It's about what he can paint as unstable. The fact that you brought Lily to work, for example. A skilled lawyer could argue that you didn't have appropriate childcare." "That's ridiculous," Ethan interjected firmly. "The company implemented specific policies to support her situation." "We know, and we have extensive documentation to prove it. But in a legal battle, every detail will be scrutinized and potentially distorted." Ms. Davies, who had been silent for most of the meeting, leaned forward. "And what about his absence all this time? Doesn't that count for anything?" "It counts, but he's arguing that he needed time to stabilize himself financially before taking on parental responsibilities. And apparently, he has documentation showing he's been sending money to a bank account for Lily for the past 3 months. Chloe looked up sharply. "What? What bank account?" "An account he opened in Lily's name. Small amounts, but regular. It's clearly a strategy to show he's been fulfilling his parental obligations. But I never received that money. I didn't even know that account existed." "Exactly. But on paper, it looks like he's been responsible while you, perhaps, didn't know how to access the funds he was providing." The silence that followed was dense and ominous. Chloe realized she was facing someone who had carefully planned his return, who had consulted lawyers and developed a strategy before taking the first step. "What are our options?" Ethan asked. "We can fight against the visitations, but we'll probably lose. We can negotiate the terms, supervised visits initially, in a neutral place, with gradual increases if he proves to be a responsible father. And if we refuse everything, then he can seek a court order, and a judge might grant even more than he's initially asking for, especially if it seems Chloe is being uncooperative without valid reason." Lily stirred in Chloe's arms, opening her eyes, and looking around with that confused expression she got when she woke up somewhere other than her usual play area. "Dada," she murmured, reaching her little arms out to Ethan. It was a word she had been saying more frequently in recent weeks, and each time she said it, Chloe felt a mixture of tenderness and pain. Lily had naturally found in Ethan the paternal figure she sought, and now a stranger wanted to claim that role based solely on biology. Ethan immediately approached and took Lily in his arms, murmuring words of endearment as she snuggled against his chest with absolute familiarity. "There's one more thing we need to discuss," David said, observing the interaction with a thoughtful expression. "The relationship between Chloe and Ethan." "What does that have to do with anything?" Chloe quickly asked. "Jackson is arguing that Ethan has inappropriately assumed the paternal role, potentially interfering with his right to develop a relationship with his daughter. and that the relationship between you two may be more than professional. Chloe felt her cheeks flush. We're not. I know, David said gently. But perception can be as damaging as reality in these cases. The fact that Lily clearly sees Ethan as a paternal figure, combined with the media attention you've received, creates a narrative that Jackson can exploit. Ethan had started pacing with Lily, who had fallen asleep again in his arms. His expression was difficult to read, but Chloe could see the tension in his shoulders. "What are you suggesting?" she asked. "That perhaps Ethan should distance himself from the situation while this is resolved? At least publicly." "No," Chloe said immediately, surprising herself with the vehemence of her response. "Lily needs him. He's been the only stable paternal figure she's known." "And that's exactly the problem," David explained. "Jackson can argue that Ethan has alienated the child from her true father." "Her true father disappeared for 10 months, Ethan retorted, his voice cold. "I've been here every day." "I know, and morally you're right, but legally the situation is more complicated." The rest of the meeting developed into technical territory, legal strategies, procedural timelines, estimated costs. But for Chloe, it all came down to one brutal reality. A man who had abandoned his daughter now had the legal power to disrupt the life she had so carefully built. After David left, Ethan and Chloe were left alone in the office. Lily was still sleeping, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing over her small world. "What are we going to do?" Chloe asked in a low voice. "We're going to fight," Ethan replied without hesitation. "And we're going to win. What if David is right, and your presence in our lives makes things worse for the case?" Ethan stood still holding Lily, his face reflecting an internal struggle Chloe hadn't seen before. "Are you asking me to step away?" "I don't know what I'm asking. I just know I can't lose Lily. She's the only thing that matters." "You're not going to lose Lily, I promise you." "How can you promise that? You can't control what a judge decides." Ethan approached her, still with Lily in his arms, and for the first time since they had met, Chloe could see real vulnerability in his eyes. "Because I won't allow that man to destroy this family." "Family?" The word hung between them like an involuntary confession. Ethan realized what he had said, but did not try to retract it. "Yes," he said softly. "Family. Maybe not in the traditional sense, maybe not legally recognized, but family." Chloe felt tears threaten to spill. For months, she had been fighting feelings she dared not name, a connection that seemed too perfect to be real. And now, just when everything was falling apart, Ethan had finally put words to what they had both been feeling. "Oh, Ethan!" Before she could finish her sentence, Lily woke up completely and began to babble cheerfully, as if she had been waiting for the perfect moment to interrupt a conversation too intense for adults. Her tiny hands reached out to Ethan's face, and he pulled her closer, allowing her to explore his features with the limitless curiosity of babies. "I think someone's hungry," Chloe murmured, relieved by the interruption. The emotions of the last few minutes had been too intense, too revealing to fully process in the midst of the legal crisis they faced. "I have some bottles in the fridge in my office," Ethan offered, but Chloe shook her head. "It's time to go home. It's been a very long day for her." As they gathered Lily's things and prepared to leave, a different tension filled the space between them. The words Ethan had spoken, family, resonated as both a promise and a complication. Because if David was right, if Ethan's presence in their lives was giving Jackson legal ammunition, then that newly recognized family could be exactly what destroyed them. "Chloe," Ethan said, as they waited for the elevator, "I want you to know that no matter what happens with this legal situation, I'm not going to abandon you two. But if having to step away means I can keep Lily, it won't come to that. We'll find a way." The elevator doors opened, and as they descended to the lobby, Chloe wondered if Ethan was right in his optimism, or if they were simply clinging to impossible hopes while the world they had built crumbled around them. That night, in her small apartment, as Lily slept in her crib, Chloe stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to imagine how to explain to her daughter someday why a stranger had more legal right to be in her life than the man who had been there since her first days of existence. And somewhere across Los Angeles, Ethan remained in his empty office, looking out the window at the city lights, wondering how much he would be willing to sacrifice to protect the family he had just discovered. He wanted more than anything in the world. 3 days after the meeting with David, Chloe received a call that changed the course of the entire legal battle. It was early morning, and she had just arrived at the office when her mobile phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. "Chloe Miller." The voice was female, professional, but warm. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Eleanor Green. I'm a lawyer specializing in family law. I've been following your case through a colleague, and I'd like to offer my services." Chloe looked towards the play area, where Lily was building towers with colorful blocks, completely absorbed in her small world of architectural engineering. "I already have legal representation through the company where I work." "I know, and David Chen is excellent in corporate law. But this isn't a corporate case, Chloe. It's a family case, and there are specific aspects of family law that could make all the difference in your situation." "What kind of aspects? Could we meet? There are things I need to explain to you in person, and some questions I need to ask you that could completely change our strategy." An hour later, Eleanor Green was sitting in the small meeting room, observing Lily with expert eyes, as the little one played with her favorite toys. Eleanor was approximately 40 years old, with her brown hair pulled back in an elegant bun, and a presence that radiated professional competence, mixed with a maternal warmth Chloe had not expected to find in a lawyer. "She's a very alert child," Eleanor commented, smiling when Lily offered her a colorful block. "How long has she been saying Dada?" "About 3 weeks," Chloe responded, wondering why that was legally relevant. "And does she always refer to Ethan when she says it?" "Yes. He's the only paternal figure she's known." Eleanor took meticulous notes as she asked questions that seemed strangely specific. Chloe's work hours, Lily's routines, details about the children's area in the office, the frequency of interactions with Ethan. "Chloe, I need to ask you something very personal, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. What kind of relationship do you really have with Ethan Hayes?" Chloe felt her cheeks flush. "He's my boss. He's been very understanding of my situation as a single mother." "That's not what I asked." Eleanor looked directly into her eyes, with an intensity that made Chloe feel as if she were being subjected to emotional X-rays. There are feelings," she finally admitted. "But we haven't acted on them. My job, the situation with Lily, everything is too complicated." "And on his part?" "I think so. Yesterday he said something about us being a family, but what? But I'm afraid that if we admit what we feel, Jackson will use it against us." Eleanor nodded, as if she had been expecting exactly that answer. "Chloe, I'm going to tell you something that will probably sound counterintuitive. Your relationship with Ethan could be the key to winning this case, not losing it." "I don't understand." U.S. family law has evolved significantly in recent years. Courts now consider the child's best interest as the most important factor, even above biological parental rights. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining a carefully considered strategy. "Lily has developed a paternal bond with Ethan. That is documented not only by her behavior, but by the viral videos, employee testimonials, even photos from corporate events. If we can demonstrate that separating Lily from Ethan would cause significant emotional harm, we have a basis to argue that maintaining that relationship is in her best interest. But what about Jackson's rights as a biological father? Parental rights are not absolute, especially when there is documented abandonment. Jackson disappeared for 10 critical months of Lily's development. That's not simply a minor detail, it's parental abandonment, and the courts take that very seriously. Lily, as if she had been following the conversation, crawled over to Eleanor and offered her favorite toy, a small plastic phone that made sounds when the buttons were pressed. "Hello, beautiful," Eleanor murmured, taking the phone and pretending to make a call. "Can I speak to the smartest lawyer in LA? Oh, it's you." Lily let out a delightful giggle and clapped, clearly delighted with the game. "She has a very sociable personality," Eleanor observed. "That will be important for our case." "Why?" "Because we are going to request a family psychological evaluation. An expert in child development will observe Lily's interactions with all the significant adults in her life. You, Ethan, and eventually, Jackson." The idea of exposing Lily to a stranger who would be evaluating her family made Chloe uncomfortable. Is that really necessary? If we want the best chance of protecting Lily's interests, yes, because if our suspicions are correct, the evaluation will show that Lily has a healthy and established relationship with Ethan, while with Jackson, she will be a complete stranger interacting with someone she doesn't know. Ms. Davies appeared at the meeting room door with a slightly worried expression. "Excuse the interruption, but Chloe, you have a call. It's urgent." "Who is it?" "Jackson's lawyer. He says it's important you speak with him today." Chloe felt her stomach clench. "Can you tell him I'm in a meeting?" "I told him that, but he insists it's about a new proposal that could resolve everything out of court." Eleanor looked up with interest. "Speak with him, but ask him to send any proposal in writing. Don't accept anything over the phone, and don't commit to anything without consulting me first." The call lasted barely 5 minutes, but it left Chloe trembling. Jackson's lawyer had been polite, but firm. His client was willing to reduce his request for shared custody to alternate weekend visits, but only if Chloe accepted immediately. If she rejected the offer, they would proceed with the full shared custody request and investigate Ethan's situation in Lily's life more deeply. "It's a pressure tactic," Eleanor explained after hearing the account of the conversation. "He wants you to make an emotional decision before you can think clearly about the options." "But what if they really can get shared custody? Wouldn't it be better to accept just alternate weekends?" "Depends. Do you trust that Jackson would be a responsible father during those weekends?" Chloe thought about the man she had known. Charming when things went well, but unreliable when problems arose. The idea of handing Lily over to someone like that, even for only 2 days every 2 weeks, filled her with anxiety. "No," she admitted. "I don't trust him." "Then we fight. Because once he establishes those visitation rights, it will be much easier for him to expand them." Later, Ethan appeared in the meeting room just as Eleanor was explaining the next phase of the legal strategy. He paused at the door, clearly unsure whether he should interrupt. "Ms. Davies told me there was an important call," he said, addressing Chloe primarily, but occasionally glancing at Eleanor with curiosity. "Ethan, let me introduce you to Eleanor Green, our new family law specialist." "Eleanor Green," Ethan repeated, recognizing the name. "I've read about your cases. You have an excellent reputation." "Thank you. And you must be the paternal figure who has caused so much legal commotion." Ethan tensed slightly at the direct description, but approached to shake Eleanor's hand. "I suppose so." "Good, because I need to talk to both of you about what comes next." Eleanor spent the next hour explaining her strategy, meticulously documenting the relationship between Ethan and Lily. gathering testimonials from employees about Chloe's stability and professionalism, and preparing for the family psychological evaluation that would be the determining factor in the case. "But there's something else you need to consider," she added towards the end of the meeting. "The strategy I'm proposing will work best if you two are honest about your feelings for each other." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked. "I mean that if you're going to act like a family, you should really consider becoming one. A marriage, or at least a formal commitment, would significantly strengthen your legal position." The silence that followed was dense and fraught with implications. Lily, oblivious to the conversation that would determine her future, had found a new fascinating toy: Eleanor's pen that shone under the room lights. "We can't get married just for legal convenience," Chloe finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "Would it only be for legal convenience?" Eleanor asked, looking between the two with eyes that seemed to see too much. Ethan walked over to where Lily was playing on the floor and knelt beside her. The little one immediately abandoned the pen and crawled over to him, babbling happily as she clung to his shirt. "Dada," she said clearly, looking at him with those big, trusting eyes that had captivated the entire office. "Hello, princess," Ethan murmured, lifting her into his arms. "Have you been good for Mommy today?" Lily babbled something in her own baby language that sounded definitively like an affirmative answer. Then she pointed to where she had left her toys, clearly wanting to show Ethan her architectural achievements of the morning. Eleanor observed the interaction with professional attention, taking quick mental notes she knew would be crucial for the case. But Chloe could only see the natural way Ethan and Lily interacted, as if they had been destined to find each other from the beginning. "You don't have to decide anything today," Eleanor said gently. "But you do need to decide what kind of family you want to be, because that will determine what kind of legal strategy we can pursue." After Eleanor left, Ethan and Chloe were left alone in the meeting room with Lily, who had decided it was nap time and had snuggled against Ethan's chest. "What do you think?" Chloe asked. "I think Eleanor is right about a lot of things," Ethan replied, gently rocking Lily. "And I think we've been avoiding a conversation we need to have." "What conversation?" "About what we really are. About what we want to be." Chloe moved closer and sat in the chair next to him, watching as Lily slept completely relaxed in his arms. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "That if we admit how we feel and things don't work out, Lily will be the one who gets hurt. She already sees you as her father. What if what? What if you decide we're too much complication for your life?" Ethan looked at her with an expression that was part surprise, part pain. "Chloe, in the last few months, you two have become the best part of my life. Not just the best part of my days at the office, the best part of my life, period. But there are no buts. There are fears, there are uncertainties, there are legal complications, but there are no buts about how I feel." Lily stirred slightly in Ethan's arms, murmuring something in her sleep that sounded like, "Mama, Dada." "Even asleep, she knows we're a unit," Ethan observed with a soft smile. "And what if Eleanor is wrong? What if admitting our feelings makes us lose the case? Then we'll lose by being honest about who we are, instead of winning by being something we're not." Chloe reached out and gently touched Lily's hair, her fingers accidentally brushing Ethan's hand in the process. The contact sent a wave of electricity between them they could no longer deny. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Me too, but I'm more terrified of the idea of losing you than of admitting I love you." The words fell into the silence of the room like a confession that had been waiting months to be spoken. Chloe looked up to find Ethan's eyes fixed on hers, vulnerable but determined. "You love me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I love you, And I love this little lady who has turned my orderly life into something much more beautiful and chaotic than I ever imagined. Ethan, you don't have to say anything now. I just wanted you to know that no matter what happens with Jackson and the courts, my feelings won't change. We're going to fight for this family because that's what it is, a family. That afternoon, as Chloe prepared Lily for the journey home, she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's words. I love you. It was something she had hoped to hear, but also something that changed the entire dynamic of her situation. Because now it wasn't just about protecting Lily from Jackson. It was about protecting the family they had unknowingly built. A family that was based on real love, and not just convenience or circumstance. And as the subway carried her through Los Angeles towards her small apartment, Chloe realized that for the first time in months, she felt ready to fight. Not just for her rights as a mother, but for the right to choose what kind of family she wanted for her daughter. A family based on love, presence, and commitment, not on biological accidents and opportune appearances. The family psychological evaluation process began on a Monday morning with the arrival of Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a woman in her late 50s with silver gray hair and a presence that radiated professional competence mixed with maternal warmth. 2 weeks had passed since Ethan's confession, and although they hadn't explicitly discussed the future of their relationship, there was a new emotional intimacy between them that was impossible to ignore. Good morning, Lily, Dr. Hayes said, bending down to the child's level. I'm Evelyn. I've come to play with you for a while. Lily looked at her with that mix of curiosity and caution that small children show strangers. But when the doctor pulled a small teddy bear from her briefcase, her expression transformed into pure fascination. Do you like my friend? Dr. Hayes asked, making the bear dance slightly. His name is Bernard, and he loves meeting new children. Over the next hour, Chloe observed from a corner as the psychologist interacted with Lily, using a variety of toys and techniques that seemed designed to evaluate her emotional and social development. Lily responded with her natural joy, laughing when Bernard the bear tickled her and babbling happily as she built towers with colorful blocks. She's a very well-adjusted child, Dr. Hayes commented to Chloe during a break. She shows excellent signs of healthy emotional development. Has she had any behavioral problems? None significant. She sometimes gets restless if her routine changes too much, but overall, she's very adaptable. And how does she react to men in general? It depends on the man. With Ethan, she feels completely comfortable, but with strangers, she tends to be more cautious. Dr. Hayes took meticulous notes, and Chloe wondered what patterns she was identifying that were not obvious to a mother without psychological training. I'd like to observe a typical interaction between Lily and Ethan, the doctor said. Would it be possible for him to join us? Chloe sent a text message to Ethan, who appeared in the meeting room 15 minutes later with an expression that mixed professional curiosity and paternal nervousness. Ethan, she said, extending her hand to Dr. Hayes. Thank you for making time in your schedule. Thank you for participating. I understand you have a very special relationship with Lily. Before Ethan could respond, Lily saw him and let out a cry of joy that echoed throughout the room. She immediately abandoned the toys she had been playing with and crawled towards him as fast as her small limbs would allow. Dada! She exclaimed, reaching his legs and raising her arms in the universal demand to be picked up. Ethan immediately lifted her, and Lily snuggled against his chest with a familiarity that spoke more eloquently than any formal testimony. Hello, princess, Ethan murmured, gently kissing the crown of her head. Have you been good for Dr. Hayes? Lily babbled something in her own baby language that sounded definitively like an affirmative answer. Then, she pointed to where she had left her toys, clearly wanting to show Ethan her morning's architectural achievements. Dr. Hayes observed the entire interaction with professional attention. taking quick notes as she followed with her gaze how Ethan sat on the floor with Lily and began to play with her in a completely natural way. "Tell me about this tower, architect," Ethan said, as Lily showed him her most recent construction. "Is it a castle? A skyscraper like where we work?" "Bah, bah, bah," Lily responded with enthusiasm, adding another block to her structure as Ethan held her so she could reach the top. "Impressive, but I think we need a stronger base here," Ethan suggested, helping her reposition some blocks. "Buildings need good foundations, you know, little missy." For the next 30 minutes, Dr. Hayes observed an interaction that any casual observer would have assumed was between a father and his daughter. Ethan instinctively knew how to calm Lily when she got frustrated, how to make her laugh when she got restless, and how to engage her in games that stimulated her cognitive development. "How long have you two been interacting like this?" "For months now, but the relationship has deepened gradually. And before that, had Lily had any paternal figure in her life?" "No, it's just been her and me since she was born." Dr. Hayes then turned to Ethan with more specific questions about his relationship with Lily. When had she started calling him Dada? How had he responded? If there were times when Lily specifically sought his comfort. "She started saying Dada about 3 weeks ago," Ethan explained, as Lily played with the buttons on his shirt. "At first I wasn't sure if she meant me, but when she started saying it only when she looked at me. How did you feel when you realized?" Ethan looked at Lily, who had decided his tie was infinitely more interesting than any professional toy. "Honored," he finally said, "and terrified, because I realized I had a responsibility towards her that I hadn't sought, but that I couldn't ignore. And now? Now I can't imagine my life without her, without both of them." It was a simple answer, but said with a sincerity that made Chloe feel a wave of emotion. Dr. Hayes noted it without comment, but Chloe could see the subtle approval in her expression. The session ended with Lily completely exhausted after so much social stimulation, sleeping deeply in Ethan's arms as Dr. Hayes packed her materials. "When will I meet the biological father?" the doctor asked. "His lawyer is coordinating that," Chloe replied. "Probably next week." "Good. And after that, I'll have to write my evaluation for the court." "Can you give us any indication of your initial impressions?" Ethan asked. Dr. Hayes hesitated, clearly considering how much she could share without compromising her professional objectivity. "I can say that Lily shows all the signs of healthy emotional development and secure attachments with both adults present today. Beyond that, you'll have to wait for my official report." After the psychologist left, Ethan and Chloe were left alone in the meeting room. Lily was still sleeping, apparently exhausted by her first experience being professionally evaluated. "Do you think it went well?" Chloe asked. "I think anyone who observes Lily with you and me can see that she's a happy and secure child," Ethan replied. "And that should be what matters most. But what happens when she sees the interaction with Jackson? He can be very charming when he wants to, but he can't fake 10 months of history. He can't create a bond that doesn't exist." Ms. Davies appeared at the door with an expression that indicated important news. "Excuse me, but I just received a call from Eleanor. She says it's urgent you speak with her today. Apparently, they've discovered something about Jackson's past that could change the whole situation." An hour later, they were sitting in Eleanor's office with expressions of disbelief as she spread documents across her desk. "Are you sure about this information?" Chloe asked, looking at the papers that apparently detailed Jackson's criminal history. "Completely sure. My private investigator found that Jackson Reynolds was arrested 2 years ago for petty fraud and illegal business activities. He didn't serve prison time, but he's on probation. And how does this affect our case? It means we can argue that he's not a stable influence for Lily. And there's more." Eleanor pulled out another set of documents. "The bank account he opened for Lily? The money isn't coming from his import-export business. It's coming from a series of transactions that are being investigated by tax authorities. Ethan frowned. Are you saying he's using potentially illegal money to establish his paternal rights? It's a possibility, and if we can prove it, it completely destroys his narrative of being a responsible father who was financially stabilizing himself. Chloe felt dizzy from the information. She had suspected Jackson wasn't completely honest about his business activities, but she had never imagined he could be involved in something illegal. What does this mean for the psychological evaluation? It means that when Dr. Hayes meets with him, she'll have background information that could influence her evaluation. A father with recent criminal history and possible ongoing illegal activities is not exactly what the courts consider in the child's best interest. But what if he doesn't know that we know this? That's where it gets interesting, Eleanor said, with a smile that had something predatory about it. We're going to let him proceed with the psychological evaluation. If he lies about his situation or tries to present a false image of stability, we'll have evidence of dishonesty, in addition to everything else. Lily chose that moment to wake up from her impromptu nap in Ethan's arms, looking around with that confused expression she got when she found herself in a new place. "Where are we?" her expression seemed to ask. "We're with Eleanor, little one," Ethan murmured, gently rocking her. "The lady who's going to help Mama and Dada keep you safe." It was the first time Ethan had referred to himself as Dada aloud, and the words fell into the office silence with the weight of an official declaration. Eleanor observed them with an expression that mixed professional satisfaction with something that looked like personal approval. "Well," she finally said, "I think we have everything we need to win this case." But as they returned to the office that afternoon, Chloe couldn't shake the feeling that the revelations about Jackson were just the beginning of something more complicated. Men like him didn't give up easily, especially when they felt threatened. And she had the uncomfortable feeling that when Jackson discovered they had investigated his past, his next move would be much more aggressive than anything they had seen so far. Jackson's revenge came in the most unexpected way possible, through an article in a Los Angeles tabloid that appeared on newsstands on a Tuesday morning with the sensationalist headline, "The CEO and the Single Mom, Office Romance or Workplace Exploitation." Ms. Davies was the one who brought the newspaper to the office, her face pale as she spread the pages before Chloe and Ethan in the executive meeting room. "Have you seen this?" she asked, pointing to the article, which occupied 2 full pages. The article was full of distorted half-truths and malicious speculation. It described Chloe as a desperate single mother who seduced her millionaire boss to secure her financial future, and Ethan as an executive who abused his position of power to take advantage of a vulnerable employee. It included secretly taken photos of them leaving the building together, of Ethan holding Lily in the lobby, and even a grainy image of the 3 of them at a coffee shop near the office. "Ethan Hayes, CEO of Sterling Innovations, has turned his company into his personal playground," read one of the most offensive paragraphs. "While promoting progressive policies for working mothers, he has actually created an environment where desperate female employees can exchange personal favors for job security." Chloe felt nauseous as she read. Every line was a distortion of her real story, painting her relationship with Ethan as something sordid and opportunistic, instead of the genuine connection that had grown between them. "How did they get these photos?" Ethan asked, his voice controlled, but with an undertone of rage Chloe had never heard before. "They must have been following us for weeks," Ms. Davies replied. "Look at the dates on the images. Some are from over a month ago." "Jackson," Chloe murmured. "It has to have been him." Lily, oblivious to the drama unfolding around her, played happily with her blocks in her area of the meeting room, occasionally letting out small cries of joy when she managed to stack several pieces without them falling. "Does it say anything specific about me in the article?" Chloe asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Ms. Davies hesitated, then began to read. Chloe Miller, 24, came to Sterling Innovations without relevant qualifications or experience in the tech sector. Sources close to the company suggest that her rapid ascent and the special privileges she receives, including the unprecedented permission to bring her daughter to work, are a direct result of her personal relationship with Hayes. "Sources close to the company?" Ethan repeated. Who on earth would have said that? "It could be disgruntled employees," Ms. Davies suggested. Or they could have completely fabricated the quotes. The office phone began to ring insistently. Ms. Davies answered, and her expression grew increasingly serious as she listened. "That was the Public Relations Department," she explained after hanging up. "They've received dozens of calls from other media outlets asking for comments on the article, and apparently CEO scandal is starting to trend on Twitter." Chloe sank into her chair, feeling as if the world was crumbling around her. Everything she had worked for, the reputation she had built, the stability she had found for Lily, all was being destroyed by lies and malicious speculation. "We're going to sue for defamation," Ethan said firmly. "Every one of these claims is false and damaging." "But what about in the meantime?" Chloe asked. "What about my job? The psychological evaluation, the custody case?" Ms. Davies came over and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Chloe, the whole company knows how things really are. We've seen your work. We've seen your relationship with Lily and with Ethan. No one who knows you will believe these lies. But people who don't know me will believe them. The readers of this newspaper, people on social media, maybe even Dr. Hayes." Lily crawled over to where Chloe was and managed to stand by grabbing her leg. She looked up with those big, innocent eyes, as if she could feel her mommy needed comfort. "Mama," she babbled, reaching her arms out to her. Chloe automatically picked her up, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair as she tried to calm down. Lily didn't deserve to be in the middle of all this drama. She didn't deserve her image to appear in sensationalist tabloids as part of a scandalous story. "I need to call Eleanor," she finally said. "This is going to affect our case, isn't it?" "Possibly," Ethan admitted. "But it could also help. If we can prove that Jackson is behind this, that he's using intimidation and defamation tactics to try to win custody." His mobile phone rang, interrupting their thoughts. It was Eleanor. "Chloe, I just saw the article. Can you come to my office immediately and bring Ethan with you?" An hour later, they were sitting in Eleanor's office as she analyzed the article line by line with the precision of a surgeon. "This is Jackson's doing, no doubt," she said, without looking up from the newspaper. "The timing is too convenient. He's trying to sabotage both your reputation and the psychological evaluation." "Can he do that?" Chloe asked. "He already has. The question is what we can do about it." Eleanor turned to her computer and began searching for information on the journalist who had written the article. "Mike Vance," she murmured. "He mainly works on celebrity and political scandals. He's not exactly known for his journalistic integrity. Can we prove Jackson paid him to write this? It would be difficult, but not impossible. What's more important is that we can use this to demonstrate Jackson's character. A responsible father doesn't publicly destroy his child's mother's reputation." Lily, who had been playing quietly with a toy on the floor, crawled over to Ethan and reached her arms out to him. Ethan automatically picked her up, and she snuggled against his chest with the complete trust of someone who knows she is safe. "This is the image we need Dr. Hayes to see," Eleanor observed, gesturing towards them. "A real family, with real bonds, facing attacks from someone who wants to destroy that stability." "When is Jackson supposed to meet with the psychologist?" Ethan asked. "Tomorrow afternoon. And now I'm even more interested to see how he handles questions about his moral character. The rest of the day unfolded in a haze of phone calls, crisis meetings, and attempts to control the damage to both personal and corporate reputations. Sterling Innovation's Public Relations Department issued an official statement defending Chloe and denying all allegations in the article, but the damage was already done. By the afternoon, CEO Scandal had thousands of mentions on social media, with comments ranging from support for Chloe to virulent criticisms that painted her as an unscrupulous gold digger. "I've read things about myself that I don't even recognize," Chloe told Ethan as they prepared Lily to go home. "According to the internet, I'm simultaneously a manipulative seductress and a helpless victim. Apparently, I can't just be a woman who found a job and fell in love." "Social media isn't real life," Ethan responded, but his voice sounded tired. "The people who matter know the truth. And what if Dr. Hayes isn't one of those people? What if she reads the article and decides Lily would be better off with Jackson? Then we'll appeal, and we'll keep fighting until someone sees the truth." That night, in her small apartment, Chloe stayed awake scrolling through the online comments about the article. Most were from strangers who didn't know her, but who felt qualified to judge her entire life based on a sensationalist article. These uneducated women always look for rich men to solve their problems. The CEO is a predator. Using his position of power to take advantage of a desperate employee is disgusting. Poor kid. She's going to grow up thinking it's okay to sell your dignity for money. Every comment was like a physical blow, but she couldn't stop reading. It was like pressing a wound to make sure it still hurt. Her phone rang near midnight. It was Ethan. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Not really. You?" "Me neither. You're reading the comments online." "Yeah, I probably shouldn't, but it's like not being able to look away from a car crash." "Exactly." There was a comfortable silence for a moment. Two people sharing the surreal experience of seeing their private lives dissected by strangers on the internet. "Chloe," Ethan finally said, "I want you to know that I don't regret anything. Hiring you, allowing Lily to come to the office, falling in love with you two, I regret nothing. Even if this destroys your professional reputation. My professional reputation doesn't hug me at night. It doesn't make me laugh when I've had a tough day. It hasn't taught me that there are more important things than board meetings and quarterly reports." Chloe felt tears running down her cheeks for the first time since she had seen the article that morning. "I love you," she whispered into the phone. "I love you too. And we're going to get through this. All of us." After hanging up, Chloe peeked into the crib where Lily slept deeply, her tiny fists closed, resting beside her angelic face. Her daughter had no idea that her image had appeared in a newspaper, that strangers on the internet were debating her future, that her world could completely change based on a psychologist's evaluation the next day. All she knew was that Mommy loved her, that Dada Ethan loved her, and that tomorrow there would be more blocks to stack and more adventures in the office she had come to see as her second home. And as she watched her daughter sleep, Chloe promised herself she would do anything to protect that innocence and that happiness, even if it meant fighting the whole world to do it. The meeting between Jackson and Dr. Hayes was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon on Wednesday, but at 2:30, Eleanor received a call that changed the entire landscape of the case. "Are you sure?" Eleanor asked over the phone, while Chloe and Ethan waited in her office with Lily playing silently with her favorite toys. "Do you have complete documentation?" Yes, I understand. No, do not cancel the appointment. We want it to proceed exactly as planned." She hung up the phone with an expression that mixed satisfaction and anticipation. "That was my private investigator," she explained. "Jackson Reynolds was arrested this morning." "Arrested?" Chloe felt her heart stop. "Why?" "Tax fraud and money laundering. Apparently, authorities had been investigating his import-export business for months. and finally had enough evidence to act. Ethan leaned forward in his chair. And what does that mean? It means our case just got dramatically stronger. A father who is facing federal criminal charges is not exactly what the courts consider to be in the child's best interest. Chloe felt dizzy with relief and disbelief. After weeks of terror about losing Lily, after the stress of the sensationalist article, it suddenly seemed that the main threat had been neutralized by circumstances completely beyond her control. But what about the appointment with Dr. Hayes? His lawyer already called to cancel, but I told them we wouldn't accept the cancellation. If Jackson wants to maintain any hope of paternal rights, he needs to complete the evaluation. And now, he's going to have to explain to a professional psychologist why he was arrested for criminal activities while trying to gain custody of a small child. Lily, as if she had sensed the change in the room, crawled over to where Chloe was and managed to stand by. Grabbing her leg, she looked up with those big, curious eyes, then turned towards Ethan with outstretched arms. "Dada!" she exclaimed happily, as if she were announcing the best news in the world. Ethan immediately picked her up, and Lily snuggled against his chest with that absolute familiarity she had developed during months of daily interactions. "Hello, princess," Ethan murmured, gently kissing the crown of her head. "Do you know you're the bravest girl in the world?" Eleanor observed the interaction with professional eyes, but Chloe could see the personal satisfaction in her expression. "This," Eleanor said, gesturing towards them, "is exactly the image Dr. Hayes needed for her evaluation. A real family, with real bonds, in contrast to a man who is so desperate for easy money that he's willing to risk prison." "So what happens now?" Chloe asked. "Now we await Dr. Hayes' report, which should be ready in a week, and we begin preparing our petition to permanently terminate any claim Jackson has on paternal rights." "Is that possible?" "Abandonment during the first year of life, criminal record, ongoing illegal activities, use of intimidation tactics against the mother. Yes, I think we have a solid basis to argue that his paternal rights should be completely terminated." For the first time in weeks, Chloe allowed herself to feel something akin to real hope. Not just the hope of keeping Lily, but the hope that they could finally build the life they had been imagining without the constant threat of legal intervention. "And the newspaper article?" Ethan asked. "It actually works in our favor now. We can argue it was part of an intimidation campaign orchestrated by a man who was being investigated for criminal activities. Courts don't look favorably on parents who try to gain custody by publicly destroying the mother's reputation." That afternoon, the news of Jackson's arrest leaked to the media, and the same journalist who had written the sensationalist article about Chloe and Ethan published a much less dramatic follow-up. "Father claiming custody arrested for tax fraud." By the end of the day, social media had begun to turn in the opposite direction. Comments were now primarily supportive of Chloe, with many people apologizing for having believed the distorted versions of her story. "See?" Ms. Davies told Chloe as they gathered their things at the end of the day. "The truth always comes out eventually, but I wonder how much damage was done in the meantime," Chloe responded, observing Lily playing happily in her area, completely oblivious to the drama that had surrounded her life for weeks. "Less than you think," Ethan said, approaching from his office. "I've been reviewing the company metrics. Our clients remained loyal, our employees supported us, and we've received more inquiries about our inclusive policies in the last 2 days than in the entire previous month." "Really?" "Really. Apparently, a lot of people respected the way we handled the crisis, and the fact that we defended our values, instead of sacrificing an employee to avoid controversy, was seen as a strength, not a weakness." Ms. Davies approached with a smile that suggested she had special news. "Chloe, I just received a call from UCLA. They're offering a part-time study program specifically designed for working professionals. Evening classes, flexible schedules, support for parents. I thought you might be interested." Chloe looked at Ms. Davies in surprise. The idea of continuing her education had been a dream she had put on hold when Lily was born. Something that seemed impossible given her financial situation and the demands of single motherhood. Could we afford that?" "The company has an educational assistance program for employees," Ethan explained. "We cover full tuition for any program that enhances job-relevant skills." "And Lily?" "Lily would have evening care here at the office on class days," Ms. Davies added. "Some of us have already discussed it. We'd take turns staying after hours and watching her while you're in class." Chloe felt overwhelmed by the generosity and support. After weeks of feeling her world falling apart, it suddenly seemed that possibilities she had never imagined were opening up. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Lily suggested from the floor, although what she really said was "ba ba ba" as she applauded her block achievements. Everyone laughed, and for the first time in weeks, the sound was genuine and relaxed. "I think that was a vote in favor," Ethan observed, approaching to lift Lily. "What do you say, architect? Should Mommy go to college?" "Yes, yes, yes," Lily responded in her own language, waving her arms enthusiastically. "It's decided then," Ms. Davies declared with satisfaction. "Tomorrow, I'll call the university to get enrollment information." That night, as Chloe prepared Lily for bed in their small apartment, she reflected on how dramatically things had changed in a single day. In the morning, she had woken up terrified by Jackson's psychological evaluation, worried about the damage from the sensationalist article, unsure about the future of her job and her relationship with Ethan. Now, 12 hours later, Jackson was in prison facing criminal charges. His custody claim was effectively destroyed, and educational and professional opportunities she had thought impossible were opening up for her. "Sometimes life changes very quickly, little one," she murmured to Lily as she gently rocked her. "Sometimes bad things that seem terrible turn out to be the path to much better things." Lily responded with an adorable yawn, her small eyes beginning to close as she snuggled against her mother's chest. "Mama, Dada," she murmured sleepily, her words blending into the simplest and most perfect description of her world, the two people who loved her unconditionally. And as she watched her daughter fall asleep, Chloe realized that for the first time since this whole adventure had begun, she felt genuinely optimistic about the future. Not just hopeful or cautiously positive, but truly excited about what might come. It was a feeling she had forgotten was possible to feel. 6 weeks after Jackson's arrest, Chloe sat in classroom 302 of the UCLA Anderson School of Management, taking notes on organizational theory as the professor explained the fundamental principles of modern management. It was her first night of classes, and she felt like an intellectual imposter, surrounded by students who seemed much more prepared and confident than she was. Effective organizational structure depends on clarity of roles, transparent communication, and the alignment of individual objectives with corporate goals, the professor said, writing technical terms on the board with the confidence of someone who had repeated this lesson hundreds of times. Chloe wrote furiously, trying to capture every concept that might be relevant to her work at Sterling Innovations. But in the back of her mind, she wondered how Lily was doing. Who had been left in the care of Ms. Davies and Mark at the office? Her phone vibrated silently with a text message. It was a photo of Ethan making funny faces to make Lily laugh, with the caption, "The most important student is learning about block engineering, while Mommy learns about management. Everything under control here." The image made her smile automatically. In the weeks since Jackson's threat had been neutralized, her relationship with Ethan had evolved into something deeper and more stable. They no longer had to worry about the legal implications of their feelings. They could simply explore what it meant to be an unconventional, but completely real, family. Ms. Miller, the professor's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Could you give us an example of how this principle applies in your work experience? Chloe blushed, realizing she had been so distracted by Ethan's message that she had missed the specific question, but she remembered the last concepts they had discussed. Well, she began, hoping to be on the right topic. In my company, we've seen that transparent communication is especially important when implementing new policies. For example, when we introduced more inclusive policies for working parents, success depended on clearly explaining to all employees how these policies would benefit the overall work environment, not just the parents. Excellent example, the professor responded with approval. And how did you handle the initial resistance from some employees? Mainly by demonstrating results. When people saw that productivity didn't decrease and that, in fact, the work environment became more collaborative and humane, the resistance naturally faded. As she spoke, Chloe realized she truly had valuable experience to contribute to these academic discussions. The months at Sterling Innovations had not only given her financial stability, they had provided her with real perspectives on organizational management that her classmates, many of whom came directly from high school, had not yet experienced. After class, as she walked to the subway that would take her back to the office to pick up Lily, she reflected on how surreal her current life was. 6 months ago, she had been a desperate single mother, living day to day, with no real prospects for improvement. Now she was a university student with a stable job, a loving relationship, and a future stretching before her full of possibilities. She found Lily wide awake and alert, even though it was almost 10 p.m., playing with Ethan in the meeting room, while Ms. Davies finished some documents at her nearby desk. "How was the first class?" Ethan asked, lifting Lily so she could run into her mother's arms. "Intimidating but good," Chloe replied, hugging her daughter. "And how was the night here?" "Productive," Ms. Davies said with a smile. "Lily's been helping me organize files. She has a natural ability to detect patterns." "Right, little one?" Chloe murmured to Lily. "Are you learning to be the best consultant in the company?" "Bah, bah, bah," Lily responded enthusiastically, as if confirming her professional ambitions. "In fact," Ethan said, "there's something we wanted to discuss with you." Chloe looked at him with curiosity. The tone of his voice suggested it was something important, but he didn't seem worried. "Patricia is going to retire next year," Ms. Davies explained, "and we've been considering who could take over her position as supervisor of the finance department." "It's a position that requires a university degree," Ethan continued, "but we could structure the promotion to coincide with your graduation." Chloe was speechless. A promotion to supervisor would mean not only more responsibility and a better salary, but also real status within the company. It would be official recognition that she had gone from being an employee, essentially, of charity, to being a valuable professional in her own right. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Ms. Davies confirmed. "You've demonstrated natural leadership skills. You understand our systems better than employees with years more experience, and you have the unique perspective of someone who understands both family realities and corporate needs. Plus," Ethan added with a smile, "we need someone who can handle important meetings with babies present, because something tells me Lily is going to continue to be part of the work environment for a long time." That night, after Lily fell asleep in her apartment, Chloe stayed awake, looking out the window at the lights of Los Angeles, processing everything that had changed in her life. In less than a year, she had gone from desperation to stability, from survival to prosperity, from being alone to being part of an unconventional but completely real family. Her phone rang with a call from Ethan. You can't sleep either? He asked. Too many good things happening at once, Chloe replied. It's almost scary. Scary of what? That it's too perfect. That something's going to go wrong. Chloe, Ethan said softly. You've worked for every good thing that's happening to you. You deserve the promotion. You deserve the opportunity to study. You deserve to be happy. And do I deserve you? That's an interesting question, Ethan replied with a slightly playful tone, because it turns out I have something to tell you. What? I've been talking to Eleanor about the adoption process. Chloe felt her heart stop. Adoption? I want to formally adopt Lily. I want her to legally, officially, indisputably be my daughter, as much as she is yours. Tears began to run down Chloe's cheeks before she could fully process them. Ethan, I know it's complicated, and there are legal processes, and we need to be sure it's what we both want. But Chloe, she's already my daughter in every sense that matters. I just want the world to officially recognize it. And that means, I want us to be a real, official, complete family. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to build something together that is strong enough to last forever. If that includes marriage, perfect. If it simply includes being committed life partners, also perfect. What matters is the commitment, not the labels. Chloe sat in her small kitchen, looking at the crib where Lily slept peacefully, completely oblivious to the conversation that was determining her future. Yes, she finally said. Yes, to which part? Yes, to everything. To the adoption, to the marriage, to building something together. Yes, to being an official, real, completely crazy family. Are you sure? I'm terrified and excited and completely sure all at the same time. That, Ethan said with a warm laugh, is exactly how it's supposed to feel. After hanging up, Chloe went over to Lily's crib and watched her daughter sleep. In a few months, that little girl would have an official father, a stable family, and all the opportunities Chloe had dreamed of giving her. Your mommy is about to change your last name, little one, she murmured softly. What do you think of Lily Miller Hayes? Lily murmured something in her sleep that sounded definitively like approval. And for the first time in her life, Chloe fell asleep without a single worry about the future. 3 months after that late-night phone call, Chloe stood in a Los Angeles County courthouse with Lily in her arms and Ethan by her side, waiting for Judge Henderson to make the decision that would officially change their lives forever. The courtroom was less intimidating than she had expected. Light wood walls, soft fluorescent lights, and a general sense of bureaucratic efficiency rather than legal drama. But for Chloe, every detail felt charged with meaning. The judge's next words would determine if Ethan would legally become Lily's father, formalizing the relationship they had built for over a year. Ms. Miller, Judge Henderson said, reviewing the documents before him. Before proceeding with the approval of this adoption, I need to ensure that you fully understand the legal implications. I understand, Your Honor. Once this adoption is approved, Mr. Hayes will have all the rights and responsibilities of a biological father. Are you prepared for that? Chloe looked at Ethan, who was holding one of Lily's tiny hands as the child played with the pen on his suit. Over the past few months, he had demonstrated day after day that he already exercised those paternal responsibilities with joy and dedication. I am more than prepared, Your Honor. Mr. Hayes is already Lily's father, in every sense that matters. The judge then turned to Ethan. Mr. Hayes, adopting a child is a permanent and irrevocable commitment. There is no trial period. There is no possibility of changing your mind if things become difficult. Do you fully understand this? I understand completely, Your Honor, and I cannot imagine anything that would make me want to change my mind. Lily chose that moment to address the judge with a cheerful, "Hello!" accompanied by a big smile, as if she wanted to contribute her own approval to the proceeding. Judge Henderson, despite his formal demeanor, couldn't help but smile slightly at Lily's interjection. "I see the primary interested party agrees with the procedure," he observed with dry humor. Eleanor, who had been present throughout the process as legal counsel, leaned forward. "Your Honor, I would like to add that over the past 18 months, we have extensively documented the relationship between Mr. Hayes and the minor. The family psychological evaluation, testimonials from employees, daycare teachers, and medical professionals all confirm that this is a genuine paternal relationship beneficial to the child's development. I have reviewed all the documentation," the judge confirmed, including Dr. Hayes' report, which was particularly detailed in its observations about the bond between Mr. Hayes and the minor. Chloe remembered that report, which had been overwhelmingly positive. Dr. Hayes had written that the relationship between Ethan and Lily was a textbook example of a healthy paternal bond, developed through consistent care, emotional attention, and regular physical presence during a critical period of development. "I have also reviewed," the judge continued, "the situation of the biological father, whose parental rights were officially terminated last year due to abandonment and criminal activities. It was a reference to Jackson, who had been sentenced to 3 years in prison for tax fraud and money laundering. His right to appeal the termination of his paternal rights had been effectively nullified by his criminal conviction. Considering all the evidence presented," Judge Henderson finally said, "and considering that this adoption is clearly in the best interest of the minor, I approve the petition for adoption." The words fell into the silence of the courtroom like an official blessing. Chloe felt tears begin to stream down her cheeks, but they were tears of pure joy. "From this moment on," the judge continued, "Ethan Hayes is legally and officially the adoptive father of Lily Miller, who will now be known as Lily Miller Hayes." Lily, as if understanding that something important had happened, clapped enthusiastically and shouted, "Dada!" so loudly that it echoed throughout the courtroom. The judge, completely abandoning his formality, laughed openly. "I think that's all the confirmation we need regarding the primary interested party's opinion." After the final paperwork and official congratulations, they found Ms. Davies waiting for them in the courthouse lobby, with a radiant smile and a camera ready to document the historic moment. "How does it feel to be officially a dad, Ethan?" she asked, taking photos as he held Lily. "It feels exactly like I've felt for the past few months," Ethan responded. "Except now I have a paper that proves it." "And you, Chloe, how does it feel to have an official family?" Chloe looked at Ethan, who held Lily with that mix of pride and tenderness he had developed during months of paternal practice, and felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost overwhelmed her. "It feels like we're finally where we were always meant to be." That afternoon, they celebrated at Lily's favorite restaurant, a family-friendly place with high chairs, coloring menus, and staff who had come to know the little lady, who always ordered pasta with cheese and always ended up with more food on her face than in her stomach. "To the Miller Hayes family," Ms. Davies toasted, raising her glass of iced tea. "To new beginnings," added Eleanor, who had joined them for the celebration. "To second chances," Ethan proposed, looking directly at Chloe. "To finding home where you least expected it," Chloe concluded, her voice thick with emotion. Lily, from her high chair, raised her juice cup and declared, "Cheers!" with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was celebrating, even if she didn't fully understand all the legal details. As they toasted, Chloe reflected on the incredible journey that had led them to this moment. Less than 2 years ago, she had been standing in the reception of Sterling Innovations, desperate and terrified, with a baby in her arms, and no options other than hope. Now, sitting in that restaurant, surrounded by the people who had become her chosen family, with a husband who loved both her and her daughter, with educational and professional opportunities. She had thought impossible. She felt as if she had lived several different lives. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "About how different Lily's life is going to be compared to mine," Chloe responded. "She's going to grow up knowing she's loved unconditionally, that she has infinite opportunities, that she can be whatever she wants to be, as it should be for all children, as it will be for our children." Ethan looked at her in surprise. "Our children? Plural?" Chloe smiled, a secret dancing in her eyes. "Well, it turns out Lily is going to be a big sister in about 7 months. The silence that followed was dense with astonishment and joy. Ethan looked at her as if he were processing the words slowly, making sure he had understood correctly. "Are you pregnant?" "Yes, I confirmed it this morning." "This morning? And you didn't tell me until now?" "I wanted to wait until after graduation. I thought it would be a good graduation present for us." Ethan lifted her off the ground and twirled her in a hug that expressed more joy than any words could have conveyed. When he finally put her down, both had tears in their eyes. "Lily's going to be a big sister," Ethan murmured, as if testing how the words sounded. "She's going to be an incredible sister. She already practices taking care of all her toys." As if she had sensed they were talking about her, Lily abandoned her archaeological exploration and ran towards them with open arms. "Mama, Dada!" she cried, crashing into their legs with the force of a small hurricane of affection. Ethan picked her up and settled her between them, creating a family hug that now included a new, unborn member. "You know what, Princess?" Ethan said to Lily. "You're going to have a brother or sister." Lily looked at him with those big, intelligent eyes, processing the information with the seriousness of someone considering an important business proposal. "Baby?" she finally asked. "Yes, a baby." "Yes!" Lily exclaimed, clapping enthusiastically. "Baby!" Ms. Davies, who had been observing from a distance with her camera, approached with an expression of curiosity. "What's our little CEO celebrating now?" "She's going to be a big sister," Chloe explained, still feeling surreal saying the words aloud. Ms. Davies froze for a moment. Then she let out a cry of joy that made several other graduates and families turn to see what was causing so much excitement. "A baby! Another Miller Hayes baby! I'm going to be an honorary grandmother to 2 children." "Ms. Davies!" "Yes, but now I'm going to be an experienced honorary grandmother. That's a completely different position, with a lot more spoiling responsibilities." The rest of the afternoon unfolded in a cloud of double celebrations: graduation and pregnancy, past achievements and future promises. They had dinner at the family's favorite restaurant, where Lily entertained all the staff with her new favorite word, baby, which she repeated with the enthusiasm of someone who had discovered the most exciting concept in the world. "You know what this means?" Ethan asked Chloe, as Lily tried to teach her favorite doll about the imminent arrival of a real baby. "That we're going to be completely exhausted for the next few years. That we're going to need a bigger house." Chloe looked at him in surprise. They had been living in Ethan's apartment, which was spacious and comfortable for 3 people. But the idea of moving into something even more permanent had not crossed her mind. "Are you talking about buying a house?" "I'm talking about building a home, a place where our children can grow, where we can make memories, where we can grow old together, with a yard for Lily to play. With a yard for Lily to play, space for the baby to learn to walk, and an office where you can study for your master's degree." "Who said anything about a master's degree?" "I did. Now that you've shown you can handle college, work, motherhood, and marriage simultaneously, you're clearly ready for even bigger challenges." Chloe laughed, but deep down she knew Ethan was right. Education had become a positive addiction, a way to continue growing and expanding her horizons. A master's degree in management would not only improve her professional prospects, it would give her the academic credibility to eventually implement programs similar to the one she had experienced for other working mothers. "You know what?" she finally said. "Yes. Yes to the house. Yes to the master's degree. Yes to all the crazy, beautiful life we're building." That night, after Lily fell asleep in her new bed, they had transitioned from the crib the previous month. Chloe and Ethan sat on their terrace looking at the lights of Los Angeles, stretching to the horizon. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Chloe asked, snuggling against Ethan's chest. "Do you remember how terrified you were, with Lily in your arms, trying not to show how desperate you felt? And you were so kind, so understanding. I never thought someone like you could see anything valuable in someone like me. Are you kidding me? From the moment you walked into my office, I knew you were special. The way you talked about Lily, your honesty about your situation, your determination to do whatever it took for your daughter. That's not common, Chloe. That's extraordinary. And now I know I have the most beautiful family in the world, a brilliant wife who just graduated magna cum laude, a daughter who makes me laugh every day, and another baby on the way, whom I already love before meeting." Chloe placed her hand on her flat stomach, imagining the life growing there. Her second child would grow up in circumstances so different from Lily's, with financial stability, a father present from the beginning, older siblings who would adore him, and parents who had learned to navigate the challenges of parenthood with grace and humor. "Do you think Lily is going to be jealous?" she asked. "Lily? The kid who shares her toys with any baby she sees, who insists on helping feed all the little ones at daycare. She's going to be the most protective and loving big sister in the world." As if she had heard their conversation from her bedroom, Lily let out a small murmur in her sleep that sounded definitively like baby. "Even asleep, she's excited," Ethan observed with a smile. "Our whole life has become more beautiful than I ever imagined possible," Chloe murmured. "And you know what the best part of all is?" "What?" "That this is just the beginning. We have decades ahead to continue building this life together." As the lights of Los Angeles twinkled like terrestrial stars beyond their terrace, Chloe reflected on the incredible journey that had taken her from despair to joy, from survival to prosperity, from being alone to being part of a family that she had chosen and that had chosen her back. She had learned that real love doesn't always come in the way you expect. Sometimes it comes disguised as a job opportunity, as a stranger's kindness, as the possibility of something better when you've lost hope that things will improve. She had learned that the strongest families are not always the ones you are born into, but the ones you build consciously, day after day, choice after choice, act of love after act of love. And she had learned that second chances exist, but only for those brave enough to recognize them when they appear and determined enough to work to make them a reality. As Ethan gently stroked her hair and Lily slept peacefully in the next room, Chloe finally allowed herself to believe in something that had seemed impossible for so long, a future full of love, opportunities, and the kind of happiness that lasts a lifetime. Her story had begun with despair and fear, but it ended with hope and unconditional love. And that transformation had not been accidental. It had been the result of taking brave risks, working tirelessly, and having the wisdom to recognize when the right people entered her life. "I love you," she murmured to Ethan as she fell asleep in his arms. "I love you too," he replied, gently kissing the crown of her head. "You, Lily, the baby on the way, this entire beautiful life we've built together." And in that perfect moment, enveloped in the love they had created against all odds. The Miller-Hayes family fell asleep, knowing they had found something worth more than all the money in the world, a true home in each other's hearts. True love, they discovered, was not something that simply happened. It was something that was consciously built, nurtured daily, and fiercely protected. It was work and joy, challenge and reward, the constant decision to choose each other, again and again. And as Los Angeles slept around them, a small family that had begun as three strangers united by circumstance continued to build their love story, one that showed that the most beautiful happy endings are those that are really just new beginnings in disguise.